Hello and welcome to Cinema to the Letter. This episode's that indie known as Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. On Cinema to the Letter, we break down the very nature of cinema, letter by letter. For each episode of a season topic, we cover 6 films that fit as C for classic, I for indie, N for new, E for egregious, M for masterpiece, and A for atypical. Because who doesn't love an acronym, am I right? I am your host, Thomas, and this is podcasting. But I'm not alone here. I have a couple other people joining me. I have a podcaster who you've known from, previous episodes on this feed, and he also is the co-host of our Patreon's Marco Polo and Adult Swim podcast, Tori DePina, who's there with his Jedi Padawan rat tail, sitting in his Jedi Council egg seat of some sort. Tori, welcome back to the main feed.
Polo. Oh, fuck. Wait, wrong show. All right. Hi. You broke me out of my prison, my monthly prison to do this. Okay.
Yes, for the intro. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Yes.
definitely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What are we doing? What did you break me out for this episode again?
We'll get into it. But you're not the only person here. There's another here the 2 doors have just opened, and he has his double-bladed microphone with his horns and his elaborate facial markings all over him from the Films for Breakfast podcast, Adam Sidorius. Adam, welcome.
Thank you so much. I was telling these guys off mic that it feels like I was born to do this because I have covered Star Wars on many different podcasts in my day, but this one may just be my perfect outlet to really get into, I don't know, just me growing up in the prequel era. So I think it's perfect for me.
Yes, well, we'll get into that for sure as we talk about, in our Star Wars season, we've hit the 2nd episode, our I for Indie. Now, I know a lot of you are asking, Thomas, how does this fit I for Indie? Well, I think it's fair play because George Lucas, I don't know if you've heard of him in relation to Star Wars at all, but George got a lot of money off of the merchandising rights for the original trilogy and bankrolled the prequel trilogy himself. 20th Century Fox only got the ability to distribute these movies, but George had complete creative control because he was playing with his own money. So I think it's fair for the I for Indie, right?
Absolutely.
Whatever helps you sleep at night.
Yeah, that's true. It's that trazodone's not helping me out nearly as much as this. But before we get into Phantom Menace specifically, the opening of every episode of this particular season, I'm going to ask our guests to regale us with their sort of history with Star Wars, their journey, where it started, how it's kind of feeling right now, in a segment that I call Guest, a Star Wars Story. So we'll start with Tori. Tori, please tell us Tori, a Star Wars story.
So it's 1997. I'm probably 6 years old. And that's at the time where they were doing the first big re-release for the, episodes 4 to 6 in theaters. They were releasing them.
Well, the special editions, most notably, yeah.
Well, yeah, that's what it was, the special editions. Yeah, because they even had the release box set for the VHSs. They were it was gold boxes that you can pull out, slides out and shit. Looked really cool. And I remember seeing about 2 out of the original 3 in theaters. Never saw the Jedi when that got released, and this was only a couple of years before what we're going to talk about tonight came out. So as far as Star Wars in general, I mean, it was always cool. I don't think I've ever been a hardcore Star Wars fan. For me, it's always kind of been about the movies and maybe some of the side properties, some video games. It's been a thing where it's yeah, I like it. I love Star Wars, but I don't love Star Wars like some out there, because some of y'all are fucking weird about this property.
What? No,
I'm sorry.
That's not true. That's impossible.
No, it's some of y'all. No, nobody in here, I hope. Um, but yeah, I remember I have as a kid is me and my little brother. We had his godfather. We were in like Boston, and he took us like an AMC theater to see this when it came out. I think it was like the first weekend it came out, and yeah, it's like a fond memory. This was like a thing to get like kids into sci-fi with. It's a great film property. It's obviously has had its ups and downs through many a media, whether it can be video games, it can be television. Like, god damn, dude. Like, especially with these prequels, it's kind of like a weird relationship. Not even a weird relationship. It's a relationship I had growing up watching these films because, like this first episode came out when I was like 8. Second one came out when I was like a preteen, like maybe 12, 13. And then I remember being like 14, 15, watching the last one in theaters with my brother. We saw all three of these movies together in theaters. So that was like a kind of like a bonding thing with me and my brother Trent. Yeah, it's been an experience. Mostly a positive one for me. I don't think I ever really had like that moment where I've crashed out over Star Wars. I've crashed out over a lot of other things, but never Star Wars. Trent's way more into it than I am. Like the fact for me, like just to put it out there, like I think The Last Jedi is probably like my third favorite Star Wars film. And that's probably one of the most maligned Star Wars films to ever come out. But then, people seem to forget about, well, the prequels. So, which we'll cover later. Yeah.
Right. I should mention I met your brother this past December when I visited you guys. And there was a point where the two of you were like in the front seat and you were arguing about Star Wars. And I literally said it's like two Tories are like fighting with each other about Star Wars. It's a true Clone War going on in the front seat of this car that I'm in. It was a very interesting experience.
Absolutely. He is me, I am him.
Yes, you are a dyad in the Force in many ways. But Adam, what about your Star Wars story? What is Adam, a Star Wars story?
Man, this truly is like a where to begin kind of thing, and I'll try not to be too extensive with it. I would say sincerely, other than like, I guess maybe just like Marvel and Spider-Man proper, Star Wars was definitely the first thing I like got into fandom wise, if you even want to call it that. But I think even before I was even aware of what like fandom was, it was just kind of a pure thing for me. I know like I want to say my first like exposure to Star Wars, and I'm kind of surprised that I remember this. When I was honestly maybe a little too young, I remember my mom took me to see Sam Raimi's Spider-Man in theaters. I was like, that came out in 2002, so I would have been 4 turning 5 that year. And I just distinctly remember walking through the Regal lobby with my mom, and there was like a giant banner in the hallway for Attack of the Clones. I was like, Mom, what is that? And she was like, that's Star Wars. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I'm like, I need to see like whatever the fuck that is. And I couldn't tell you the first time I actually consumed Star Wars media, but I do remember from like 2003 onward, I'd say like 2003, 2005, from when I was like 6 to 8 years old, it was just a pretty much nonstop inundation of just like Star Wars media, Star Wars toys. Around the time of Revenge of the Sith, like I remember you'd go to a 7-Eleven even, right? And they'd have like Darth Vader ices. I remember Burger King, if you went there, they had like, I don't know if you guys remember this, they had like watches that you could buy at Burger King with like the characters on it. Kind of a niche thing, but I just remember like we went to Burger King one time and they gave out watches with like Chewbacca on it or something. So that was like very, I don't know, just like all the like little niche marketing. So it felt like around that era, I mean, yeah, there was, I guess, a lot of controversy around the prequels, but when I was a kid, my memory of it was just nothing but pure love. Like I think one of my earliest memories of Star Wars was and do forgive me, I forgot the gentleman's name, but the creator of Samurai Jack, his 2003 Clone Wars series.
Gendy
Uh,
Tartakovsky.
yes, yes, great visionary creator. He is that Clone Wars series that he did is so fucking good. And honestly, it may have been my first Star Wars, like straight up. Because I
Mm.
remember watching it on Cartoon Network and loving it. And I remember that Christmas, I want to say Christmas 2003, maybe if that's the year it came out. I remember my mom got me like a box set of like the toys specifically from the Clone Wars. And I want to say probably after that, I watched the first two prequels, like in 2003, 2004. So I remember around the time Revenge of the Sith was coming out, I was about 7 years old. I was super excited. And mind you, my mom, she was a single mom at the time, she did not like Star Wars whatsoever. So of course she got stuck with a shithead kid who loved Star Wars. I was going to make her see the third prequel movie. She had only watched like 25 minutes of A New Hope when she was a kid. She saw Chewbacca, she turned it off. She was like, I'm done with this. So so of course she got stuck with me having to take me to like a Saturday morning matinee of Revenge of the Sith. And I don't think it's an over exaggeration to say that changed my life when I was like 7. Just like I remember sitting there how I felt in that opening sequence with like Anakin and Obi-Wan and they just throw you in the middle of the battle. It transformed something in me. I played the PS2 game around that era. I had the Attack of the Clones video game as well. I read comics, I had collectibles, I had trading cards, action figures galore. Not to mention, I was the perfect age when the Dave Filoni Cartoon Network Clone Wars series came out. I was still like in elementary school, so it was just perfect for me at that age. I watched it all the way until its abrupt, slight ending in like I think 2012, I want to say, before it got revived on Disney Plus.
Hmm.
And then yeah, I mean, with the sequel trilogy, that was I would say to this day, The Force Awakens is the most excited I've ever been for a movie. I have never experienced anything like that. And I remember I turned 18 the year that The Force Awakens came out. And my first job was at AMC. And the very first time I got to see The Force Awakens was the week I got hired because they were having an employee screening like 2 nights before it came out. Because they got the like, I probably shouldn't really, I mean, it doesn't matter. It's 10 years ago. But they were
Yeah.
like, yeah, they had an employee screening of it.
Unless they're playing the long game and AMC's listening, just like, boys, we got him,
Yeah.
finally.
Yeah, exactly. No, they have their snipers locked on me. No, but yeah, I remember being like, because I really thought like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to like call out work sick that night on Thursday night so I can make that 7 p.m. screening at a different AMC. And little did I know they were going to treat us to like a employee only screening. I was seeing it 2 days early. And mind you, this was like the night before the embargo broke. It was the same night as the premiere, whenever that was. So like truly no reviews were out for it. I felt like I was going into it completely cold. And that was one of my most like cherished movie going experiences was like watching The Force Awakens at like 1 a.m. in an almost empty IMAX 3D showing. It was kind of incredible to me. And I was a huge sequel fan, and honestly Disney Star Wars defender for a while because I love The Last Jedi. I'm right there with you, Tori. It's honestly at this point probably my second favorite Star Wars movie. Um, right behind Empire. I just think it's a miraculous Star Wars film in every way, shape, and form. The Rise of Skywalker exists, and and I do feel like to kind of tie it all back in, you did mention like kind of the state of everything right now and how we're feeling about it. The Disney Plus-ification, I feel like, of Star Wars, if you want to coin that term, is it's not sitting quite right with me. I
Hmm.
feel like the brand has been very cheapened, and that's not to say good things haven't come out of it. I think Star Wars Visions in particular is really cool.
Yes.
I'm sure there will be other things we mentioned throughout the pod. One very big example on Disney Plus that I wink wink, I'm sure will come up, but there is some good stuff on there. But and I didn't even like hate the Acolyte like other people did, but just I mean I don't know like Ahsoka and stuff like that. It just feels very cheap, and it feels like we're kind of shrinking the world as opposed to exploring it. So I will always love Star Wars. I will always have love in my heart for Star Wars, but it does feel like its current state is a little less special, which going back to what I said before and how special it felt to me when I was growing up, that's a little disheartening considering just how beautiful it was to me in that way. Not in the same way that other people I think will say that like, oh, Ryan Johnson ruined my childhood. It's not like that. It just I don't know. I'm just not seeing the same buzz or the same joy anymore, which is upsetting. But I will always love Star Wars. So that's my long-winded history of it.
Right. Well, I'll just say, like, with this season, I'm kind of piecing together my Star Wars history over the course of these as part of this segment. Because I think I'm very similar to you, Adam, but just push it up a few years.
Right.
In terms of like my previous history, as I mentioned on the last episode that we did, I saw the original trilogy when I was a very little kid on VHS. I was a bit too young for the special edition re-releases, like just too young, that Tori's talking about, to go in a theater and see them at least. So I watched the original versions on that like last VHS that was available of those, and I loved those movies so much, and it was, within a few years before Phantom Menace. Doing this episode is kind of interesting because, like Tori was kind of mentioning, the kind of like the memory of the release of these movies. The Phantom Menace is definitely the first movie I remember being hyped for as a child. Like, there were other movies that I was like interested in, like, later this same year, like Pokemon, the first movie, which I remember seeing in a theater, or before this, like even Godzilla 98, I was kind of hyped for when I was a very little kid. But I think the Phantom Menace in particular is like the one where I went fucking all in on. Like, I had the N64 pod racing game. I had a bunch of the action figures for that one, which famously did not sell very well. But meanwhile, I'm just like, Chancellor Valorum action figure? Yes, I want a fucking Terrence Stamp Chancellor Valorum action figure in my collection, sure. And then just the build up to the release of this movie and everything. I remember seeing this movie multiple times in theaters. It was probably the first movie I remember doing that with as well. This is like a crucial sort of piece of my childhood. I was so deep into Phantom Menace, like merch in particular. I had the skateboard that had Anakin like in his pod racing helmet on it, despite the fact that I was a very unathletic child. I rarely used that skateboard at all. I probably tried to like roll down the street and then I like fell over and skinned my knee. Like that's it's just shit like that. Like I was still just so deep in it, just like I'm so absorbed in it. And I think my relationship with Star Wars does kind of parallel where, like, Adam, you're definitely, as you've kind of mentioned, like very much a diehard prequel kid. Sort of like the main audience Star Wars has, I would argue at this point, who is appealing to the Disney era. Is kind of appealing to like the prequel kids in particular, who are now in the prime age to spend money.
Yeah,
and
don't I know it?
Exactly. And like that whole thing is so interesting because I remember being a little kid who loved the Phantom Menace and saw it multiple times in theaters, but was still witness to like the backlash from particularly Gen Xers who say ran the comic book stores I would feel awkward in. Because I'm just like, oh, these guys don't seem to like that me, a young kid, is trying to get into comics, almost as if there's some sort of gate that they're keeping in front of me. Perhaps, maybe. I'm not sure. Yeah, so I especially, obviously, the biggest thing is, like, the Red Letter Media, like, Plinkett reviews, which were, like, such a massive thing when I was especially, like, discovering YouTube and, like, all the wonders that had on there. That was, like, probably the first, like, video essay I ever watched was that, and kind of, like, put me in sort of the camp of, like, oh, I have to, like, loathe the prequels now. And I remember distinctly having that thing where, like, by the time each prequel came out, I was like, oh, Phantom Menace isn't a good movie, but I'm excited for Attack of the Clones. And then by the time Revenge of the Sith, like, oh, Attack of the Clones wasn't a good movie, but Revenge of the Sith's gonna be great. Like, I fell into that fucking pattern so succinctly with each movie. And so, yeah, it's been weird just kind of, like, especially doing this particular season, kind of wrestling with that factor of, like, being at, like, both ends of it. And I think the Phantom Menace, it brings up a lot of those mixed feelings very firmly, especially when I was rewatching it this time for this particular episode in prep. But let's go ahead and get into it. Let's get into Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace.
I will not condone a course of action that will lead us to war.
We haven't much time.
The Federation has gone too far.
The death toll is catastrophic.
Our people are dying, Senator. We must do something quickly.
You must contact me.
There is something else behind all this, Your Highness. They will kill you if you stay.
You said people gonna die?
Once those droids take control of the surface, they will take control of you.
Get to your ships!
They will never get me onto one of those dreadful starships.
Always two there are, a master and an apprentice. Wipe them out. All of them.
So, Star Wars Episode 1 The Phantom Menace, directed and written by George Lucas, only his second Star Wars film, and only his 4th out of 6 movies that he directed. Just really want to underline that that's always so weird to me.
Crazy.
Yes, it's so insane. But yes, this is his prequel to the original Star Wars trilogy, which happens in a big gap between Return of the Jedi is 1983, and then you have Phantom Menace. And in between, you have some like spin-off material and like novels and even cartoon shows, like the Droids show or the Ewoks animated show, but very minimal stuff in between. Until like the Red Up to Phantom Menace, this was a massively hyped movie when it came out on May 19th, 1999. Made over $1 billion, especially with like re-releases and stuff. It's really accumulated that. It was the highest grossing movie of 1999, a banner year for film. Adam, you mentioned like this is basically your first Star Wars movie, right? When you were younger, this is the first one you remember seeing. So I'm curious, how is this particular movie like aged with you and your in your time with Star Wars?
So I'm glad you asked that specifically because that actually gives me an opportunity to rectify one thing I accidentally omitted from my history, which is, and I don't know how I did, fucking Lego Star Wars of all things, which
Of course, yes.
I feel like, honestly, even to this day, I think really helped the reputation of the prequels. Like it kind of in other ways made it more digestible in the goofier, worse areas of the filmmaking. I, if anything, like I remember playing the Lego Star Wars games more than I do watching the prequel movies all the way through. Because they were just so formative to me. And also to your point about like, you know, they're now targeting the prequel kids that can spend money now. They're all grown up. I do feel targeted very much so. And it feels like we're in an era where I can only speak for myself, but I do have the suspicion a lot of people feel the same way. That experiment is kind of failing a little bit because now I feel like a big consensus is, well, what now? You know, like, yes, you've revived the Clone Wars and successfully ended it. And you've re-released the Phantom Menace in theaters. You've re-released Revenge of the Sith in theaters. You know, we've gone back to the Hayden Christensen, Ewan McGregor well. He's got an unlimited series. They both appeared in Ahsoka. You know, like I feel like the nostalgia well there has been explored pretty much as you can without straight up retconning like Anakin's tragedy. So then we're just kind of left with the legacy, right, of the Phantom Menace. And for me, I've had a very interesting relationship, and also very much to what you said, Thomas, about like the red letter media of it all. Who I love those guys. I don't want to blame it entirely on them. Not that there's really anything to blame, but yeah, like I think like CinemaSin's red letter media culture absolutely had a field day, and they completely took over the narrative of Star Wars prequels. Not to say it wasn't critiqued before that, absolutely it was. But you're right, like growing up on like YouTube and just like film internet in general, like that did inform the consensus. And if you dare say that you maybe unironically enjoyed these movies, that kind of painted a target on you. Not to sound dramatic, but like it kind of did. Like these movies had it out for them. So I did have a similar thing where I liked this movie a lot when I was a kid. It was always my least favorite prequel, just because I loved Attack of the Clones when I was a kid. I just thought the action of it was cooler. I loved the like espionage kind of like noir stuff in the beginning and then the big battle at the end. I love that stuff. And of course, Revenge of the Sith was my favorite when I was a kid, as was most people's. But I mean, this still had so much stuff that I liked. Like, I mean, obviously the pod racing, the aesthetics, just Darth Maul, obviously. There was so much I liked as a kid that when I did revisit it prior to The Force Awakens, when I was a teenager, I felt disheartened to just mostly find it boring. And I did see the critiques that everyone was talking about. And I did avoid rewatching it for many years until I think it was the 2024 re-release.
Right.
And when I revisited it in theaters, it played differently for me. And maybe it's again, just going back to like the Disney Plusification of Star Wars, how everything does feel like kind of inherently cheap and it needs to move really fast and get to the point. And also, in my opinion, just lacks a singular vision. You can very much tell that's a writer's room with those shows. When I sat down to watch the re-release of this, warts and all, you're just kind of taken by the fact that it is a George Lucas vision through and through. And I got to revel in the vision on the big screen, which again, I never got to see this in theaters. So seeing that in theaters was very special to me. I don't think it's a perfect movie. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like The Phantom Menace is some kind of masterpiece. I don't think it is. But I do think it's a really fun movie. And I think it has a big heart. And I think his vision's pretty intoxicating. And I think the more that streaming and the content era that we're living in kind of dilutes Star Wars as a brand, I think the prequels just may age better. And I think that's getting more and more true each year, especially this one.
Yeah, I should also bring up one thing I forgot about my particular history also, is another big thing, especially that ties to this particular movie, is I definitely listened to and watched the music video for Weird Al's The Saga Begins more than I did watch this movie in full.
Yep.
That was my first Weird Al song, and also probably one of the earliest songs I can remember memorizing word for word. Like, I re-listened to it recently, like before this, and I was like, oh fuck, I know this song back and forth by heart. The inflections, everything. But Tori, what about you? What is sort of like your relationship with this particular Star Wars movie, and how is it kind of like mutated for you, as it were?
I mean, so like it was more of like an experience like when I first saw it in theaters with because I'm a kid, so I was just excited because I was like, oh, Star Wars. And it's like that thing where if you're a kid and you see movies that are like this, extravagant, you remember it as like a good experience, and you remember seeing it as a good experience when you watched it, when your family gets it for you on home media like VHS. We had it on VHS tape. And you have like somewhat positive memories of it, but it's the older you get, you see all the memes, the blanket reviews, just nerds being cynical fucks when they're grown ass 40-year-old men shitting on kids enjoying a property, or just shitting on people enjoying a thing in general. And you kind of it forms this idea in your head that the prequels suck. Now for me, the prequels suck, but it doesn't suck because like, oh man, the Plinkett review. It sucks because like, I just have eyes and I just, it's just my fucking opinion. You know what I mean? Like watching this, right? The Phantom Menace. I haven't seen the Phantom Menace since probably 2013, 2014. And I remember watching it then and I'm like, this is bullshit. Like, just to be very blunt, I have no real like build to this. It's just bullshit. And there's positives I take from it. Like the fucking Darth Maul, Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan scene is still one of the best lightsaber battles in the history of this franchise, as far as like films are concerned. The fight is amazing, just like the pod racing scene, like the excitement around that, the stakes that are there. But then at the other end of it, there's like some of the shittiest acting I've ever seen, not even in a Star Wars film, just in general. Like, how do you get that bad of a performance out of Natalie Portman? This film is just an example as like to why Lucas is such a just shit director to me, or just a hack director to me when it comes to like making these movies, because I just feel like he can't write dialogue. He doesn't grab the emotion, or the at least the appropriate emotion out of his actors, because you see this in the later films. Granted, I will say this about the prequels: this is the worst prequel movie. I think Attack of the Clones is slightly better, and I think Revenge of the Sith is probably top 4 for Star Wars films. Like, I like Revenge of the Sith probably better than Return of the Jedi, even with its weaknesses. So the films do get better, but when I'm watching this, it's just everything. It doesn't. I can't take it seriously. I can't take the Trade Federation seriously with the badly dubbed, shittily voice acted, with like the most stereotypical fucking voices I've seen for Japanese people ever in the form of these aliens or whatever the fuck their names are. I don't.
Excuse me, they're the Nemoidians, okay? The Nemoidians. They're a crucial villainous part of this entire saga, and how dare you? And I have a 4-hour video essay I'm going to make about you. And how dare you say such a thing?
I feel like I was going to get a stereotypical speech about how, like, about the Hanzo sword and its importance to Japanese culture. Like, that's how stereotypical these motherfuckers were.
Are you saying George Lucas is a bit of a weeb?
I'm saying no. George, no, it's just like, yeah, but there's like, at least be like, why don't you try to be like, I don't know, entertaining weeb, like, I don't know, like fucking Tarantino when he weebs. At least that's like fun to watch. It's just as stupid. It's just as like, thoughtless. But I don't know. Like, when it comes to like, right. When I hear, Adam, when you say like, oh, like there's like a heart to this film, I don't see necessarily like a heart to this film, because it just feels like movie was just made because Lucas was like, oh, this is my world, this is my creation, and I'm gonna do whatever the fuck I want. He drops his dick on the table, which is fine. He drops his dick on the table. I just don't see like heart out of this. There's stuff I like in this. Again, I don't want to make it sound like it's just me shitting on this film, but because again, pod racing scene, a lot of the battles, especially with the lightsaber duels, as we'll get into later on. Yeah, but it's also just like, oh man, it's just like some of this acting is just like, it's not even when there's good acting, the lines are so like bad. You know what I mean? Like even in between like watching the Phantom Menace, I was we're showing the stuff between Anakin and his mother. I watched the scene in episode 2 where Anakin finds his mother and she gets to see him one last time. And there's a point where it's like I'm almost crying because the actress who plays her, this Swedish actress who plays her, is like really good, and Hayden Christensen is actually, not doing the memes of Hayden Christensen in this film franchise. But then just the way that like the some of the dialogue is written just almost ruins it for me. It's just so, I don't want to say lifeless. It just feels like it's somebody who doesn't talk to enough people. Like it doesn't feel like this is a human who wrote this. It feels like I don't want to even say AI wrote this, but like, I don't know. It just feels like there's just moments where it's just stilted dialogue to me. And I just feel like George Lucas's weakness as a writer really shows through all 3 of these films. Even with Revenge of the Sith, where it's like, there's a line that fucking Natalie Portman says where she's like, Anakin, hold me like you did on Naboo. And I think that's one of the worst lines in like cinema. I think it's such a shit-tastic line. Like, it's just like, why couldn't he just do what was done with the sequels, like right. the sequel trilogy, like just have or do what you did with the originals. George Lucas didn't even direct the first one, right?
He did direct episode 4, A New Hope.
Okay, so
he is the director on that. I think the big thing though, that like to segue at least into like what I kind of think here, like the thing that's interesting about the Phantom Menace to me at this point is what Adam kind of said, and I think what also you said is very true, in that this is George Lucas's vision, and he is very passionate about this vision, but also he does not have a lot of people who are willing to say no. Which, that's a thing that the Plinkett review says. But if you do watch a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff, like, I would so recommend watching the beginning, the making of episode 1, which is like a 1-hour featurette. It's on YouTube. It's where a lot of the footage that Plinkett review, like, pulls from, in terms of, like, the behind-the-scenes stuff. It is a very naked and honest kind of thing of, like, George had the incredible thing of, like, I now have the technology. The whole thing is, like, he made these movies. He was like kind of incubating on them for a while, obviously, in like the decade and a half between Return of the Jedi and this. And while Steven Spielberg was finishing up Jurassic Park at ILM, he was like, oh, the T-Rexes look great. Now I can finally like put forth like the vision, the grander ideas I had for these prequels into action because we have CG now. And I think in that way, this movie in particular is incredibly impressive. Where like, this is the only one of them that's shot on film of the prequels, because Attack of the Clones is the first digital movie, and I feel like while I wouldn't be surprised if the other ones are better when I revisit them in the pursuit of the season, I do feel like this is the best looking of the prequels because it has like that shot on film stuff, and along with the CG, there's a lot of like models and practical elements that I think make this one at least look better than a lot of those prequels, and they doesn't feel as much like a tech demo, even though there's plenty of tech demo stuff we can get into with this movie and the innovations it had. That makes me like respect this movie a lot for what it's trying to do, while also very much agreeing that George should have had somebody say no a couple times.
Just a smidge, probably more than just a smidge. Yeah. I don't even think this is even the best looking one, because I'm probably gonna because watching this, like, watching it yesterday and then watching it today, I think I'm probably gonna watch 2 or 3, because there was moments where I thought this looked like shit, like especially during the some of the sequences where it's like clearly there was the green screen and then it just cuts and it's at the point where they had the actual staging, and it just took me out of it. And I was just like, it was just super obnoxious in my face as far as like, and I also even think I thought this when I was like a teenager watching this, like when the Gungans are battling the droids, like that battle sequence, and the fucking Vanilla Sky looking ass like sky that's above them. I always thought that looked like shit. And even watching this like between yesterday and today, I'm like, this still takes me out. It's just fucking weird. It just looks too, like it's too like bright, too cheery. Like it doesn't even like it doesn't look good bright and good cheery though.
But I think to speak to Adam's point earlier as well, like I think a lot of modern stuff, not just with Star Wars in general, but with a lot of modern effects movies, has also made Phantom Menace like kind of shine a bit better to me because it's so new. Like, we'll get into Jar Jar, but Jar Jar is, if nothing else, an incredible technical achievement and like the first example of like an actual motion capture character. And what the guys in ILM and Ahmed Best did with that character, I really respect for like a lot of like the innovation that's involved, and at least like that brightness, I think is at least more preferable to me than like modern sludge CG gray that you get in like Marvel movies and shit, where it just feels like, oh, this is like kind of ugly but also assembly line, as opposed to it's an imperfect object, the Phantom Menace. But I do kind of feel what Adam's talking about in terms of like there's a love and at the very least like the attempts at sort of really pushing the medium of like digital effects in particular as much as they can, for better and worse.
Yeah, I can respect that.
And if I may, I will also say that if to go off your point about the ILM and the Jar Jar of it all, I will recommend a really great docu series on Disney Plus called Light and Magic. It's all about ILM. It's about the conception all the way to, I believe, present day as of season 2.
Well, but yeah, the second season is about the lead up to Phantom Menace and the aftermath of it.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember because I watched them back to back and it kind of blended into each other. But like especially the Phantom Menace and the prequels of it all, that stuff is really, really fascinating. And of course, there's many documentaries, including the making of the Phantom Menace documentary that I was on the home video release of this. But yeah, the Light and Magic I thought was, because also you have a lot of talking head interviews of people like present day interviews that are like reflecting on their work in the Phantom Menace and how revolutionary it was. There's nothing quite like this or any of the prequels really, and I think that's more so where when it comes to like the heart of it, I mean, I do find something endearing about the conceit of following the Return of the Jedi, where of course Vader is redeemed at the end, and he takes that note and tries to say, okay, like let me show you the full picture here. And like that conceit I do find like endearing, and especially with like Anakin's relationship with his mom and everything, or even just like Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon's relationship, I do find to be there's a lot of heart there, even with his stilted dialogue and kind of like awkward composed shots. Like I won't deny any of that, absolutely. But I still do find the swings to be endearing. And I do find of course, as always with Lucas, the attention to detail, the world, the craft on display, I find that very, very endearing.
My problem with the prequels has always been having Anakin kind of be at the center of this, because what you see in stuff like the Clone Wars, whether it's Gendy's version or the CGI version that was started with the '08 movie, is that I just felt like there was like way more interesting stories and way more of a world to explore other than just having it kind of centered around, quote unquote, the chosen one. There was like just this wide sort of like, I don't want to say like rogues gallery, but you had this like wide array of characters and wide array of stories that you probably could have went with to make the film more interesting, to kind of immerse me more into this world, other than just giving me breadcrumbs and then having me focus on people that, I mean, I care about, but then also not really. And it's just awkward seeing them like communicate, talk to each other. Like I'm like, when it comes to performances, it's a miracle that to me that Liam Neeson's performance as Qui-Gon is as good as it is, with how, because he's really good at this. Like he's fucking good in it. The best example of sort of like the reserved, kind of held back, maybe even stilted performance from a character is definitely Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan. I think he played young Ben Kenobi really well in the prequels, especially here where he's kind of more of like a background character anyway.
Yeah, I forgot how long he's on the fucking ship when they go to Tatooine. I was like, fuck, right, he's on the ship
so
for like 30
long.
minutes of this movie.
Yeah, it's like there's like 30 to 45 minutes where he's just kind
not
of
there,
relaying messages. Yeah, just not there. It's just like it's Liam Neeson and what's the kid's name? Or he's not a kid anymore, obviously, but plays Anakin.
Well, Jake Lloyd, yes.
Yeah, Jake Lloyd, who I felt bad for that guy. I was reading his story a bit last for the week leading up to this episode.
Him and Ahmed Best had a really rough time after this movie.
Extremely, especially I would say Lloyd. I would say Ahmed Best is like, hey, that sucks, because I mean, like, when it comes to like our culture, it's like it sucks to get the stamp of like the minstrel show Black Sambo thing, where it's just
Right.
like, yeah, it's that, it is that, it deserves criticism at that, but I put less on the performer trying to eat and more on the people who are fucking paying him with this stupid ass character. And granted, there were moments though, I will say, when it comes to Jar Jar, where I was like, oh, you know what? Maybe I was a little too harsh on it. But then there was other moments where I'm just like, dude, they know what the fuck they were doing with this shit. Just like they knew what the fuck they were doing with the Trade Federation guys.
Right. Which is what's really interesting about like with the Light and Magic documentary that Adam was talking about. Like big shout out to, I believe his name is Doug Chiang, who's like the lead like designer guy who was involved in particularly this movie in episode 2. He talks a lot about how like we would just like hand stuff to George and you'd be like, yeah, that's good. Yeah, we'll go with that. We'll go with that. And especially the development of Jar Jar is so fascinating to hear about on that season, where it's a lot of just like, we designed like so many different things. And apparently like one of the person that's design team just like did a random doodle when George was like, let's do that. Let's do it like this, like it's a rabbit kind of thing. And that ended up like just evolving to like what Jar Jar is. And Ahmed Best and even like the ILM guys did talk about how like, there were points where we were just like, I don't know if this is like gonna work, George. But we didn't say that because it's George Lucas. So we can't like question him necessarily. There's a lot of that kind of stuff where I can see a lot of like that love as well from like the design team, and like you're mentioning, Tori, about the way that episode 1 is like such a big evolution for like other creative types, like took a lot of the kind of like stuff that George and his design team and the effects work and all that, all those people like on the crew like established and like really evolved from it. So I think that's the thing, because like I like a lot of the design elements of this movie. Like even whatever problems you have with Jar Jar, I think that is a pretty interesting design, especially for like sort of a secondary Star Wars character, or even like the battle droids, or as much as I really do not like the Nemoidians as characters, the fact that they're also like they're practical kind of puppet like animatronic things as well, and they look really cool with like the way their mouths move and shit like that, is like there's a lot of like good design stuff in here, and even like the ships and a lot of other stuff just that works so well.
Oh yeah, aesthetically, like this movie is amazing. I think the aesthetics are what drew me in when I was younger, or what drew me away from really paying attention to like the glaring flaws that I see now as a jaded and cynical ass adult. You're absolutely right. The diversity amongst all the characters, it's fucking amazing. Like I will never take that away. That's a strength of this film. There's strengths to this movie. I'll never take that shit away. And there's even moments where they almost make me forget about like the glaring weaknesses. I guess like if I were to compare this like to music, Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, is like the 808s and heartbreak of cinema. To where like I hate Kanye's 808s and Heartbreak, but that album like inspired a whole ass generation of like kids that are like half my age, or artists that are half my age, that went on to have like careers, and they all credit that album as being what got them into like their music. It's not music that I necessarily like or even care about, but at the same time, it's also like this pioneered shit. And I understand that Episode 1 definitely pioneered shit when it came to what you could do with CGI, what you could do with practical effects, but you can, as far as like juxtapositioning them together, or even just the stuff that they were like he wanted to do. Like he was just like, I'm not gonna say it was like creating technology, like let's say like an Avatar did, or like what Cameron did with Avatar. But the fact is that Lucas wanted to just do what he wanted to do, and artistically I can respect that. Obviously, you know what I mean. It does it make it a great film for me? No, I don't even think it's even like an okay or a good film. I think it's like a bad film. But I would be foolish. I'll concede that it would be really fucking foolish of me to like deny all of that it does, or all that it achieves, like aesthetically, artistically, beyond just like what story it was trying to tell me. You know what I mean? Like I like those strengths are like, they're great. They're right there. They're golden. Like even the ending sequence with the parade, like that's gorgeous. Like that is a gorgeously shot scene. With the only thing that kind of sticks out, where when Queen Amidala or Padme hands the orb to the young in general, you could definitely tell that she is looking down at a tennis ball as opposed to looking at him like eye to eye.
Look, let's be real. The eyeline thing is a problem with this movie throughout the entire runtime.
That's the most egregious, though. That's the most egregious one.
I would argue the most egregious is when they first meet Jar Jar, and it's like Liam Neeson and Ewan McGregor clearly are not looking at the same spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of the most awkwardly placed scenes. I mean, when it comes to especially if you watch like the B-roll stuff, like of Ahmed Best, like on set, and how how Jar Jar's head was like basically strapped to the top of his head. So I can only imagine that. And again, like to what you said earlier, like this was the first instance of this. There's never been a fully like motion capture CGI character prior to this. So like of course they don't know where to look. There's never been a precedence for this kind of performance. You know, to what you guys said, like it's a miracle that that Liam Neeson's even good in this movie, considering he's like a traditional actor. And especially at this point, this is before his like action stint of the 2000s. This was, he was going off of like period dramas and just like straight like dramatic roles in the 80s and 90s. To go into this was weird for him. This was different for him then, people often forget like after Taken is when he did all the action stuff, but before that he never really did this kind of stuff. So again, like he was like not a big spectacle actor, so the fact that he was like it's just funny in retrospect, honestly, the more I think about it, to put Liam Neeson next to like on a George Lucas set, and then Ahmed Best has like a fake Jar Jar head strapped to the top of his head, and he's being asked to like spout exposition about like the Gungan culture or something, and then Ewan McGregor's just kind of like aimlessly looking around. It is very funny. Like there's no denying it.
No, I think especially with the with the Liam Neeson of it all, I do agree that I think he manages to like have a great stoicism that makes up for, I think Qui-Gon not being the most sensical character in terms of all of his actions, like many perhaps characters in this movie, in terms of like their motivations and why they're doing certain things even. But yeah, I think Neeson sort of handles, especially like of these sort of stoic performances, which most of these performances are kind of aiming for. I'd say he's pretty good. And also I would disagree about Portman specifically in the Queen Amidala garb. I think when she's doing that fucking weird ass accent, that's not British, not mid-Atlantic, it's just like the Viceroy, like whatever the fuck that is. I feel like that's at least like more of the way to go for me. Or even another person who I think is just great in all three of these movies. Fucking Ian McDiarmid returning as
tremendous.
Yes, as Palpatine, particularly in this mode. Like the Senate scenes, which many people have said it, but a great kids movie thing to have like giant Senate meetings that last for quite a while. At the same time, his conniving and his ability to kind of like really slither, even as he's on like a weird fucking gray platform in a gray room where everyone's talking about politics in a Star Wars movie directly, as opposed to kind of being subtle in the background with the original trilogy. It's like outwardly open, like, do you want us to send a research party down to make sure that your actions are actually valid? Like, what? I don't know why we need this in a Star Wars movie necessarily.
Well, I mean, I think that can be traced back to a lot of the criticism of Phantom Menace. It's just strictly like, why is this in a Star Wars movie? I mean, like literally like wasn't like the opening crawl. I don't remember it verbatim, word for word, like I used to. I only mentioned that because there was a point in my life where I could recite every opening crawl to each prequel off the top of my head. That has since left my brain. But I mean, the opening text is literally about trade federations, and like so, I can only imagine like you're sitting there at the midnight showing of this movie, and you're like, wait, what? Why is this part of it? Like, what are we talking about here? Like just there's so much like inherent politics here that I've grown to love just because I'm a fucking freak that likes this shit. But I can't blame anyone for being bored by the like weird politics and the weird like jargon. I mean, that's Star Wars in general, like weird jargon, in-world shit, like of course. But even for that standard, this movie is like dense with like its lore and its like geopolitics and like political corruption. And wait, so like Palpatine is pulling the strings for this reason with this guy because of XYZ. Like it's really it does get convoluted. Absolutely.
Right, and he has to disguise himself very cleverly as Darth Sidious because no one could ever possibly figure out that's him.
No, but also the people that are investigating him are like thousands of the most capable and if you want to go into like the religious allegory, like chosen ones that are like I don't know, force like all tied together to investigate something and they still cannot figure out like who is behind the cloak. It's yeah, like of course it's hilarious and I will never take that away from any of the people that just cannot get into it. You know, you do have to question if people that love it like me, and I'm saying this with all humility that I can, is it more of a Stockholm syndrome thing, even on my behalf, where I mean I did grow up with it. I've had no choice but to love it for so long. Now that I'm like at my big age of 28, I'm like watching it back and I'm like because you know I've been through the downs of it. I loved it and then I hated it and now I'm back to liking it. You know, like that's kind of where it's been. Like I wouldn't say I love this movie. The only prequel I really love is Revenge of the Sith, but I have circled back to appreciating it and making peace with it.
Yeah, for sure. I think a big example of this, especially in sort of like the prequelization, right? Which this is not the first prequel ever, but this is definitely like the biggest kind of like this crystallized like the term prequel in the cultural lexicon of like, oh, okay, this is a story that takes place before the story that you watched previously took place. Like the key example to me, sort of the dyad between those two things, is like the reveals of like the origins for R2D2 versus C3PO. Where I really like R2D2's like introduction, like he's one of the many droids who like has to fix the ship on Naboo during the middle of the battle. And he's able to do it, and we give like a little bit of dedication to R2D2. Like I kind of that helps endear me a bit to like Queen Amidala. At that point, I think it's Keira Knightley. That's another thing with this movie is watching like, is that Keira or is that Natalie? You gotta like really, you gotta like really sense it out. Unless Natalie's in the same shot as Padme, but like I like that whole thing with R2D2. I think that works like pretty well. It's like, all right, there's not like a lot of context of like, oh, who R2D2 is and where, who built him or whatever, versus C3PO being like, oh, Anakin built him to help out with his mom around the house, even though C3PO famously and Protocol Droid's not famously like great at housework or being competent like standing necessarily. It's for like translating languages and shit. It feels like it's a weird step to be like, oh, that's how we're going to integrate C3PO into this. Even though I do really love the look of C3PO in this, and that it's like it's Anthony Daniels performing a puppet and being like CG'd out. And I love him without the coverings. I think that just looks really cool. And even like him like carrying the flag during the pod race, I think is rad. Shit like that.
I will even say I had the action figure of that specific 3PO,
Same.
like the
100%,
unfinished one, and I loved him. He was just I've always loved that design. I agree. Honestly, there's been a lot of Lord of the Rings news, but I was thinking a lot about the Hobbit trilogy this past week, and I mean, I guess if there's ever like a one for one comparison, it's probably that. I'm guessing, which is really just like a visionary director who the only difference is Lucas was fully committed to this. He fully believed in this, and it kind of does feel like Peter Jackson more reluctantly went back to Middle Earth,
especially with that production of those movies. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for long story short, for anyone that doesn't know, but like Guillermo del Toro was supposed to make at least the first two Hobbit films, I believe. That was supposed to
when it was supposed to be two of them as opposed to three, yeah.
Yeah, and then he had to leave because of MGM stuff. Good friend of the pod, Shaq Lambert, told me about this actually on the Tintin pod that we did recently. So check out shameless plug right there. But Del Toro left because of MGM's financial stuff, and that's why Peter Jackson reluctantly came back, even though Del Toro did so much pre-production. You feel that when you're watching The Hobbit. It does feel like it's a very, and I still enjoy the first Hobbit movie, but like it feels very stitched together. It feels like a very reluctant filmmaker coming back to something his heart really wasn't in. And that's the tired version of it, right? Like it does feel like Warner Brothers was scraping the IP barrel a bit, and that's where a lot of prequels come from. Like you can even attribute to like X-Men, that was a trend. I mean, or I guess even before Origins or before First Class, it was Origins Wolverine, just like this needless, we have to explain how we got here kind of thing. With the prequels here, I kind of find it endearing because I do find that interesting. How does Anakin demise? Like, how do you go from the chosen one to the most ruthless dictator and low-key errand boy and puppet in the galaxy, like, like that. Like, how does that happen? I do find that interesting. But do I need to see like countless flashbacks to like Wolverine and like the countless wars throughout history? Maybe not. Maybe the mystery is part of the fun, you know? So yeah, it definitely made a precedent, I think. And I do think it proves that unless there's a distinct vision there, which I do think Lucas has here, it's not going to work. The only times I could really think off the top of my head of like a good justified prequel is like maybe X-Men First Class with Matthew Vaughn,
Right.
I would say. There's probably other ones I'm just blanking on, but yeah, unless there's like a committed vision, I'm mostly anti-prequel, to be honest with you. I don't really usually find the need for it.
Underworld: Rise of the Lycans. Excuse me. Sorry.
That's a pretty good one, actually. Yes,
I liked
yes.
it when I was a kid. I haven't seen it in a while, but I did like it. Yeah.
As the biggest Underworld mark in the world, it is definitely my my Twilight, my Resident Evil. Underworld: Rise of the Lycans is probably, I could argue it's the greatest prequel ever made, even if it's for a franchise as Drekken as over the top shit as the fucking Underworld franchises. But yeah, no, but I get your point. There's kind of this like you got to make it like worth my while to really get me to give a shit about a prequel. So, which this trilogy is like, I don't know. There's like this trilogy is always like a mixed bag. You know what I mean? Like there's stuff that I really do love about this part of the franchise. There's stuff I just really find just eye rolling.
Yeah, I think most prequels, what tends to work better is when you sort of go at it from either like a very like direct kind of contrast. Like I would say probably the best prequel in some ways, like something like Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me.
Oh,
which
definitely.
is a brutally upsetting, just like unraveling of like what was like kind of spooky, but also kind of like whimsical and comedic with the TV show. There's something like that, or if you want to do it, there tends to be the better ones are like the weird sideways prequels. Like the first Omen's a great example of that. Like that movie is 90% not a prequel to The Omen until like at the very end they make it that way. And even the same thing with of all the things, like, a rare example of a prequel being way better than its original, like Ouija: Origin of Evil.
Oh,
where it's
let's
like,
go.
oh, let's make a fucking like god awful piece of shit movie's lore like actually emotionally investing when you get like Mike Flanagan to do something with it. Shit like that. Like I think that's the thing, as opposed to with a lot of sort of like the prequel A to B stuff. It's at least like initialized here. Like I agree with you. I think that origin of Anakin, I think, is a palpable story to like really like center a sort of prequel trilogy on. And I think there's a lot of like interesting bits and pieces that we get over the course of these movies to like make that fall compelling. Even in this movie, like I do really like the scene where Jake Lloyd ends up saying goodbye to, I believe it's Pernell August is her name, who plays Shmi. Like that sequence I think is really well done. Or even like the example of like, the pod race is a great way of showing off like his actual acumen to like be a Jedi like that early on. That he has like the ability of like, oh, I can like create things. I have like certain senses and stuff like that. I think it's a great way of like having a really big elaborate sequence actually display the fact that like, oh, this guy, even at a very young age, too young to begin training, obviously, as we all know from Jedi lore, far too young. Should have been doing this at like age 3, loser. Come on, get off your ass at like 7 when you're fucking building pod racers, whatever. I think like that stuff really works to like detail more about him, but Obi-Wan in this movie feels like such a wasted potential of like him not being the one that inspires the idea that Anakin is like, oh, is like the chosen one, and him having like basically like nothing to do until that big final lightsaber fight at the end. Yeah, so there's just like weird gives and takes about certain things. Also, even just like with to go back to Anakin, even the his relationship with Padme, I think, is colored in a very interesting light by having it start this way. You can tell George like completely was like, maybe we shouldn't have done that, and we're just gonna age up. Like, no, Anakin's basically the same age now as Padme. Totally forget about that.
I mean, it's very. I mean, honestly, a lot of Lucas properties are just full of those weird like age things that they do not have to include whatsoever. I mean, like Han and Leia canonically have a very weird age gap. Like Indy and Marion, and Raiders, like, just a ton of that shit where it's just like, why even write? Like, you put yourself in that corner for no reason. I don't know why you did it. And it's one of those things like, it's weird that's happened 3 times. And so, yeah, no, I totally get that. And it does like anytime I watch this movie, there is like a big like like why not just make them like at least close in age, like when it's happening, and especially even in Attack of the Clones, like even when they try to go around it, even when Padme's like, Annie, you're so big now, like,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's like, why, dude? Like, why are you doing this? And but I've always contended that, even though I do enjoy the prequels largely, I've always thought it was kind of weird to maybe not start, at least with a first act, with Anakin as a kid, but not start the film a little bit more in the first part of the trilogy, showing him as a Padawan immediately. You know, I think that's immediately more interesting, where you start the dynamic in the trilogy with a rapport with him and Obi-Wan. The only pushback against that idea that I would give myself is that I do love the final moment between him and, not to fully jump ahead, but like between him and Anakin, like after Qui-Gon has died and Obi-Wan is left with like Qui-Gon's request of like looking after him. And there's like a deep like melancholy and even like kind of like terror in the look he gives Anakin, of like this untapped potential that he's not quite sure he knows how to guide, you know?
Right, because he himself is also kind of young, even though they keep
Oh, big
insinuating
time.
like, oh no, he's good. I don't need to train him anymore. I'll take on a second apprentice and shit
Yeah.
like that. It's totally fine. Don't worry about it. Yeah, there's like a bit of an intimidation and fear. Yeah, I agree, and also a bit of like a, oh fuck, I'm like stuck doing this now.
Yeah.
No. Okay, sure.
That really, until I put it into context, like Ewan was very, maybe even during Train Spotting. I don't know exactly where the overlap was, because Train Spotting was 98, right? I
No,
want to say
96. I believe it's
Oh,
like
96.
right after that is when he catches the eye
Okay.
of George, and then like, oh yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And like, I don't know if another performer like any less than Ewan could have pulled it off, because I think Tori brought it up earlier, like there's so much that he's just not in this movie, or even when he is in this movie he's kind of like awkwardly there. But when he's there and he's like, along that scene that again with Jake at the end, just like pure face acting there, like even when like Qui-Gon dies, like tremendous performance from Ewan McGregor, that again, I don't know even if the film built up to those moments properly, but due to the performances and even the John Williams of it all, especially, like it just carries, I think, ultimately.
Yeah, John Williams is doing some heavy lifting in these prequels, particularly like Duel of the Fates. That's a whole star for this fucking movie.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that is like the defining Star Wars prequel music of all time. To the point where like I almost am upset that Colin Trevorrow did not get to make his episode 9 titled Duel of the Fates, because it's such a good fucking title for like anything, like at all, like let alone a piece of music. And then I would absolutely be cool with like making it the name of a Star Wars movie. Yeah, no, it's such a great piece of music. It's almost tired to say it, but it's so good.
Yeah, Duel of the Fates is a much better title than, say, The Phantom Menace.
I've never disliked the title as much as other people did. I do think there's like a coolness to it, but I don't think like in the context of the movie, it really like works. Because is the Phantom Menace Darth Maul or is it Palpatine?
Right. Or is it even
Like-
Anakin, sort of like phantom-ish, kind of being the background menace that's like rising kind of thing, yeah.
Exactly. Like I've never quite, I mean, I'm sure there's like an answer. I'm sure George Lucas has been pressed on it and he gave like a bullshit answer, but like that's never really clicked with me. I kind of like it. Like it is cool. It just doesn't at the same time make a lot of narrative sense.
No, yeah, especially when like the appeal of a Star Wars title is very simple, sort of like action. A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, or even like Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith have a similar kind of thing. Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, Rise of Skywalker. There's something like very clear about like what this movie's about, as opposed to a Phantom Menace.
I agree. I mean, I won't like I remember the day that The Last Jedi title was revealed. That just fueled like Star Wars fandom for like an entire year. Because like the theories of like, wait, The Last Jedi? What do you mean The Last Jedi? Like it was such a great title, You know, I definitely would not put the Phantom Menace on that bracket whatsoever. It's more in the Rise of Skywalker realm where it's kind of cool. It kind of rolls off the tongue, but it's also kind of, what do you mean? You know, like, what do you mean the Rise of Skywalker? Like, who's Skywalker? What are we doing? Like, what is, you know? I thought we just killed a Skywalker. So like, what do you mean?
So I'm curious about this. With this movie and all the new things it introduces, who is your favorite new character here? Not a legacy character. Who is a character that's introduced here? Tori, who's your favorite new character in The Phantom Menace?
Watto? No.
Jedi tricks don't work on him. He's so innovative.
Easily Darth Maul.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Fuck yeah. Darth Maul is like one of those guys where it's like his whole thing is just aesthetics, but he's so fucking cool. I mean, look at him.
Sometimes aesthetics carry when the aesthetic is just that fucking good, and it like is in this. Like, it absolutely is.
Like, man, and the fact that they willed him back into existence too later on, and during like Clone Wars and shit, I was like, yes.
Right, because that's a big thing with this movie is that Darth Maul was sort of like the big character they were advertising. Like, look at this motherfucker, the new villain for Star Wars, your new Darth Vader, popping up in here, and a lot of people had the issue of like, oh, he kind of just like sits on the sidelines, says a couple things in Peter Serafinowicz's voice over Ray Park's like visual performance, and then has like a really cool lightsaber battle at the end, and then gets killed off here. There's a lot of like, you know, kind of criticism about that, and I generally agree with that, but at the same time, I do love like not just even the aesthetic look of it, like the horns and the face makeup and everything, but a big sort of point of contention with a lot of people with the prequels is like, oh, the over the top lightsaber fights. Like, I remember that being a complaint around the time this one came out, and I still think like while I do like a lot of the lightsaber fights in the original trilogy, particularly like the Empire Strikes Back one, I do like here seeing what Jedis are basically like unfiltered. Like, Luke kind of hops around a bit, particularly like the Empire Strikes Back one, but it's like clearly from like a guy who's not been like able to be trained that much by Master Yoda. The contrast here where it's like, oh, Jedis are able to like hop around and like do these elaborate sort of like fight techniques. I really love a lot of the fight choreography. Shout out to the stunt coordinator, Nick Gillard, who like created a lot of the stuff. Like, and he created with like a combination of like various different kind of fighting styles like kendo and kujitsu, and a lot of other fighting techniques were like created to basically do the lightsaber fights. And I think like not just the one even there at the very ending of this movie with Darth Maul, but I like the stuff with the lightsabers earlier on when Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon are like fighting the battle droids and stuff like that. I think that elaborate fight choreography, it shows like, okay, this is something we can innovate and show that's like different from the original trilogy, that sets these movies apart. Before we kind of curtail and be like, hey, C-3PO, here's how he got built. And Yoda, did you know he was an asshole on the council before he was our lovable friend?
They do a good job at like just making Yoda distinct, I think. Where he's not quite the loony, lovable puppet that you that you saw from the originals. He's kind of like a stern asshole, very like, I mean, I guess this is like the same as the originals, but he's just very like cryptic and like he just put it in a different way, like where everything he says is so shady, and you're like, what do you mean? Like, what's your fucking deal, dude? Like, what, like, can you just like tell me straight up like what the issue is here? Like, instead of just being vague about why you don't want me to train him or why you don't want me to do this. Like, but I do love the blend of or is it entirely puppetry in this one? I can't remember.
Depends on which one you're watching. Which version of this you're watching, because in 2011 they replaced what was a puppet in the theatrical release version. And the version that was available for a while until about 2011, when they did the Blu-ray releases, they made him into the CG. Which, in fairness, I don't love the puppet design from Phantom Menace. I don't blame them for changing it. Yeah, it looks kind of rough. It kind of looks like, oh, let's make him look slightly younger. And it's like that just, it looks like a Yoda knockoff. Like, this is Odoy.
Yeah, no, I agree. I remember and one of the most like, I think, coolest pieces of media that you can find on YouTube is actually the Phantom Menace bootleg trailer that was recorded on I was in Meet Joe Black or whatever it was called.
Right, yes.
So you can find it on YouTube. It's someone that went to the midnight showing of that movie to watch the print of it. like they completely sold out Meet Joe Black, and then like 95% of the audience left when the movie started.
Yep.
And but you can listen to like the audience reactions to the trailer from the cam rip of it, and you can also see the original Yoda puppet on there. I'm sure you can see HD footage as well, but to see like the original print and everything, just how maybe grody it looked on screen, is still kind of a pleasure to watch. But yeah, I'd highly recommend any Star Wars fan to check that out if they haven't.
But do you have a different person in terms of like a new character that you want to spotlight at all, Adam?
Man, it's so hard because I mean the answer is Darth Maul, and not to
Right.
sound like a broken record, it is. I mean, yeah, just I mean everything that Tori mentioned, like everything with like the Clone Wars and what they did with him, and but even here, I mean, he's just such a great, iconic, like instantly Boba Fett level character. Actually, you know what? And maybe it's not so much on this movie, but I do love Mace Windu. I do I love some Mace Windu. Again, not very present in this one, but even in this one, it's kind of like, oh, what's his deal? Like, what's up with him? And I'll also throw you a Dominic West Palace Guard. I've always like, you know what? Why not? I always thought he looked cool. I thought he had the coolest blaster of all the Palace Guards. And when I went to go rewatch the Wire over the pandemic, I was like, wait, hold on a minute. And I put two and two together. So that's a little bit of an answer there too. But I guess the real answer is probably Mace Windu, because I love Mace Windu.
I didn't even know I didn't know McNulty was in the fucking prequels. I didn't notice him at all.
Well, there's a couple of those where it's like Keira Knightley, obviously as Sabe, the double, but also Sofia Coppola is amongst that brigade.
Yeah.
Right. And also apparently Sally Hawkins is one of the villagers during like the Naboo parade at the end.
Oh.
Like you can barely see her, but she's there in that crowd.
Also, I will throw out one more person because I had to actually look up his name. Captain Panaka, I just always thought was like a cool, like, obviously has no characterization whatsoever. I just liked his like silly little hat and the fact that he always had this blaster in his hand. I may have had the action figure for him for some fucking reason. But I always liked him. I think I even like played as him sometimes on Lego Star Wars when you could like unlock the characters. So again, nothing because of the characterization there, because again, there really was not. Yeah, I really loved I loved him for some reason, and I could not tell you why.
Yeah, shout out to Hugh Corshi, is the actor who played Captain Panaka. I think Captain Panaka kind of represents a weird thing to me, where every time I watch this movie, I really want him to sort of be like the Han Solo of this movie.
Yeah,
the guy who
absolutely.
kind of questions, like, I know I'm the guard, but like, this is kind of bullshit that we're like doing this, right? I don't know, this feels like a bad plan. I think that guy has like, it feels like he's just kind of like kept back from being able to do that the entire movie, which is kind of a bummer. But, you know, in terms of like newer characters, I want to shout out like my man. I think, you know, we've talked kind of a bit about Jar Jar, and this might be a segue, but I fucking love Boss Nass, as played by Brian Blessed. I think such a, like, much more of, like, a fun Star Wars character in terms of just, like, he's got this kind of ego about himself, and when, like, he's going back and forth with Natalie Portman, like, during the climax of the movie, he's like, oh, you were, you know, trying to kiss up to me, the Gungans. I really appreciate that. We're gonna be friends now. Like, that thing I think is, like, and Brian, the weird mouth thing, too, the thing is, like, that's kind of like way more in the realm of like what I want from like a Star Wars character. That kind of just a weird fucking dude who's doing shit like that. Like Sebulba, I think, also has a bit of that. The enemy pod racer, like that kind of stuff, where there's a bit of a weird greasiness to them.
Yeah, I love Sebulba as a villain. Like that's just like a perfect villain for that sequence. He's such a dick, and he almost was the hero because he almost killed fucking Jar Jar, and then he would have been the hero of this movie, but then he was stopped.
But don't forget Quadinaros or whatever, however you pronounce this.
Oh, Ben
name.
Quadinaros, who completely fucked it up at the right beginning of the race.
Maybe, and I do not mince words when I say this, the ugliest motherfucker ever in like any Star Wars media. He is he's atrocious. I don't know if you guys are keeping up with the video games, but there's a new pod racing video game coming out, and he does return in that game. So
fucking better. I need all my boys back. I need Sebulba back. I need Ben Quadinaros. I need all of those boys need to come back.
Unfortunately, to your point earlier about they are getting the prequel kid money right now. That is pre-ordered. I can't even lie. It is. They did get me.
They sunk their They sunk their fangs into you.
They
God,
did.
this
They got me good.
damn. We're the best, Tom. We truly are the best generation. No, we're just kidding.
Clear, great.
Imagine, right?
We're leaving things open so great for future generations to come. We're doing great.
Hell yeah, we're doing awesome right now, man.
We're doing great. But yeah. So we've been kind of dancing around some of these characters. Like we've mentioned the Nemoidians a lot. We've mentioned Watto. We've mentioned Jar Jar. Should we address the elephant in the room about these characters?
I have no clue what you're talking about. I have no clue who you could possibly be referring to.
Yeah, who else? Honestly, I feel like those were the elephants. What's the other one?
Those are the three I'm talking about. Watto,
okay,
Jar Jar,
yeah.
and the Nemoidians. The elephant in the room is very much... You kind of talked about it here. The kind of stereotype allegations against Jar Jar.
I never really got the ones for when I was a kid for Watto. Like, so that's like a Jewish stereotype, right? Like that's what his whole thing was. Is that supposed to be what it is? Because I don't really see it.
Yeah, it's a bit of that. It's also, a bit like Middle Eastern stereotypes, with the haggling. And then again, maybe I shouldn't be the one specifying any of these stereotypes, but it seems like those are kind of the two that George is aiming for, if you will.
I thought it was like a dude he sounded like, I was like, is he Bulgarian or something like that? I couldn't pinpoint what stereotype he was going with. It was weird.
I mean, he did get scathed a lot. My boy Watto is like he's been dragged under the mud. But that being said, it's almost like so crazily offensive in you can kind of label it to every stereotype imaginable, that it's like kind of crazy that he puts so many stereotypes in one package. Like, I cannot believe it. Like, as you're watching it, and especially if you haven't seen it like in years, you're like, oh, there's no way it's as bad as like I've heard. And then you watch it and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, no, he's so terrible. Like, it is a true this goes to something you said earlier, Thomas, about how a lot of the film is just afraid to give George Lucas notes, right? People on set, like whether it's the VFX guys, the creative consultants, whatever, they were afraid to interject and be like, should we do this? Like, should we do this the way you're wanting?
Well, mind tricks don't work on him, only money. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad that the culture at large has circled back to being like, this is so fucking ridiculous that we can't like even be angry at it. But again, when you watch it though, it's totally like, what the fuck? Like what are we doing?
Imagine the pitch meeting where it's just like, hey, I want Watto to be, I want him to be Bulgarian, Jewish, and Middle Eastern at the same time. And then someone's like trying to be like, George, that sound, and then somebody just like smacks his hand down, like, dude, just shut the fuck up. No, just give it to him. Dude,
yeah, you know what, George? Yeah, we'll totally have him have a trunk nose that looks very hooked. Yes, 100%. Yes. We'll do that. Yes.
Absolutely, exactly.
There's just like a red button in like an ejecto seat, like right. The pitch meeting. Yeah.
It's like, do you want to get ejected? Shut the fuck up. Let him do it. We have to.
Yeah, because honestly, like the thing is, like the Jar Jar really got the brunt of that, and one's not the person to necessarily say how offensive Jar Jar is necessarily as a stereotype. But I just feel like Watto, in particular the Nemoidians, like should have deserved more of the brunt. Especially the Nemoidians never get talked about, admittingly because they're very minor characters in this. But they, I think, are the most aggressive example. Just what Tori was kind of mentioning earlier in this, like that the accent and even their costume design and everything, I think, is far more like directly offensive to me than even like Jar Jar at the very least. Like just feels like a bad comedic relief character to me more than not, as opposed to specifically a stereotype. But I don't know. You kind of maybe agree more with that, Tori, about the sort of stereotype elements of it?
I mean, like, dude, take a shot every time he goes, how rude. And it's just fucking, it's just, bro. Oh my God. It's like, it's not even as bad either. Cause I honestly feel like sorry, I keep dropping the Japanese stereotype aliens names. Nemoidians. Okay.
Newt Gunracer, how dare you?
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like the name of like an alien race in like a Rick and Morty episode. Just like a small like background fucking joke or whatever. But anyways, it's just, but I don't know, man. There's just like, it's just a blend of just the most random hits of racism that's just like, it's just coming at you so fast. You don't even have time to get pissed at it. You just kind of just stand there with your mouth open like, oh, okay. This is it. You know what I mean? We got Jar Jar doing his Jar Jar thing, just being the stupidest character in the history of this fucking franchise. But then we also got Watto, and it's just like, oh, this is bad. This one's not bad. And then you got the Nemoidians, and it's just like, bro, the mouth, the flaps don't even match, like, for the fucking voice. It's just like, what are we? Y'all really had nothing else you could have went with? None of this shit's in the original trilogy. Like, what the fuck made you want to go this route in the first place? Like,
Well, I think also with a big reason why he got away with so much of this shit, is that when you look at the history of Star Wars, like the entire history of it, like any like if the Harrison Ford, like Luke or Mark Hamill, like stories of like what it was like to be on set of the A New Hope back in the day, is like no one trusted George with the first film. Like they like the studio, the crew, the actors, like every single person on set doubted what he was creating. And then it wasn't until retrospect, like after they were done, the film was released, everyone was like, wait, this is the biggest movie of all time? What do you mean? So I feel like there was almost a fear when this was in production of people that felt like this feels wrong and I should probably speak out. But I can only imagine it was like well, I'm didn't Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford feel that way in the 70s? Like, who am I to talk like to tell him not to do this? And I think that's how he got away with so much shit in these movies.
Mm-hmm.
On top of the fact that, like you said, he also fucking self-financed it. So, I mean, who's gonna pull the plug exactly? Like, so there's just so many factors here of like, he's a madman. He's a fucking mad scientist. He has no regulations. And I mean, I think this is a much better film than the film I'm about to mention, but it's a lot like Megalopolis in that way, right? Where Megalopolis, I mean, again, it's completely self-funded. I don't even know if it had a distributor during production. I think someone had to like buy it reluctantly almost.
Right, everyone refused except Lionsgate. He was like, I guess we'll put it out.
Exactly. And like, but when you watch Megalopolis, which again is a much worse film, I think, than The Phantom Menace, but when you're watching that film, you're kind of like, yeah, like I can see why no one wanted this, and I can see also how you had to self-fund it to get away with any of this. So I think it exists in that interesting space of people being afraid to tell him no because people did once, and then they were wrong to do it before.
To circle back a bit, Adam, I'm curious, what are your thoughts on Jar Jar? As you notably circumvented around Jar Jar a bit. How did you like Jar Jar as a kid, and do you still like Jar Jar now?
I mean, I will say as far as Jar Jar goes, it's hard to even take him seriously because he's just been so meme to death like throughout my childhood that even like when I was a kid, I didn't dislike Jar Jar when I was a kid. I liked him. I think the Clone Wars do a good job at humanizing him throughout the like he does have a kind of, dare I say, semi-interesting character arcs in the Clone Wars, or not even character arcs, but just like singular episodes, like kind of like bottle episodes where he's front and center, I should say. And I think that helped me, form an opinion of him, which is, I don't know. In this particular film, like if I'm just talking Phantom Menace, I mean, I'm not gonna lie and say like, oh my God, it's so fucking funny when he like, like makes a fart joke or something. Because it's not. It's very much not funny.
But you did roll on the floor when he stepped in the dog poo.
Well, yeah, well, that's because that's fucking hilarious. But otherwise, yeah. But I do think, how do I put this? Like, again, this may just be a Stockholm syndrome thing where like I don't dislike the character, but I also wouldn't say I like him. He just kind of operates in a weird space where he's kind of like family to me. You know what I mean? Like he's kind of like that really fucking annoying cousin that's just there every Thanksgiving. And I'm like, oh, okay, you know what? Sure. Craig's gonna be there. That's fine. Like but I've lived with him for so long and I've seen him so much that I'm just used to him. But I can absolutely like if I can put myself back in the shoes of like a 1999 audience, I 100% understand being fucking weirded out and being like, what the hell is this? Especially coming off the original trilogy. But yeah, maybe also counterpoint my answer to your question. If I go to my Fortnite skins, I do have Darth Jar Jar on there. So
Right, of course. There's that theory that Jar Jar was secretly going to be the evil mastermind behind everything. There's that fan theory. Do we believe that fan theory?
I do think there was there was a pretty compelling section of people before The Force Awakens came out that thought he may have been Snoke. That Andy Serkis was playing a grizzled Jar Jar. There was like a legit section of people that thought JJ was going to go there with it. And I would have paid good money to see that. I believe canonically, and please, if anyone knows, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think canonically, like the last writer that tackled him actually wrote a death scene for him, where like after the fall of the Republic, he was like kind of a court jester. And I don't remember what planet he was on, but he was like subjected to being a court jester, and he basically died in the streets, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Which is a fucking crazy end to that character, if it is still canon. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. That might be Legends. I'm not sure. Yeah, but
okay.
but at the same time, I do like the fact that like the sort of consolation prize of like Jar Jar becoming less and less prominent in these movies is that in Attack of the Clones he is directly responsible for like the fall of democracy, basically.
Oh yeah,
by
it's
being
entirely
like
his
Palpatine's
fault.
puppet. Yes, 100%. Yeah. I do love that. I think that's hysterical that he's a fucking dummy senator.
He's the bringer of all death and destruction. And it's like internally his monologue is like that of like a Meat Canyon character, but outside he's just like it's just being delivered in that fucking voice. And it's just like, I shall bring your destruction of all the Jedi. I'm not proud of this voice.
Dude, it is
It's
so
a very
good.
good impression, yeah.
I hate it so fucking much. Oh my god. It's like that fucking it's like what I forgot what the instrument that like Double D can play in Ed, Ed and Eddie, and it's like he's really good at it, but he hates fucking playing it. That's how I feel about this voice. It's awful.
Yeah, and we've said it before, but once again, I think the biggest thing I can say is that Ahmed Best is like not phoning it in at all.
He's definitely
giving
not.
it 110% of just like especially like a lot of the sort of like attempts at Buster Keaton style kind of like physical comedy. I really respect that kind of stuff. It is just like what George is tasking him to do is insurmountable to like make this work. It's just like it's like trying to climb up a wall that's covered in spikes, and he's grabbing onto the spikes and bleeding. God bless him, but it's just it's definitely just it's such a shame about like what happened to him, and like we mentioned Jake Lloyd earlier, just the kind of that big backlash against this movie, which was so instrumental. Like I remember, I don't know, Adam, have you seen Spaced, the Edgar Wright show?
I think I gave it a shot when I was like a teenager, when I was really going through like my, not that it ever really died, but my special like Edgar Wright Cornetto like phase. And I did not realize how immune to British humor I really was. But I did give it a fair shake, I think.
There's an episode in season 2, which is the one that's after Phantom Menace came out, where the Simon Pegg character's working at a comic book shop and is like yelling at some unseen figure about like the Phantom Menace, and then we turn around and it's like a 7-year-old kid who walks out crying, and his boss is like, kids like Jar Jar, you have to get over it. They'll like it. It's fine. Like that, it just so embodies like the weird kind of toxic discourse that like really I think starts with this movie. The reaction to this movie, I think, for whatever fair criticism you can have about it, I think the beginning of the curdling of sort of a certain section of Star Wars fandom really starts here. That's why they even like that sort of section dubs themselves like the Phantom Menace or whatever.
Yeah. It's kind of weird like to see all those like retroactive like medias that like are responses to it. Like even the film and honestly I don't even know if I like this movie. I saw it once when I was like 12, but Fanboys, which I know is based off a true story,
yeah.
I believe. I think
I allegedly. I don't trust Ernie Klein about anything. But
okay. Yeah. I know I saw it when I was 12, I think like on a summer day. I obviously like I saw that it was like Star Wars adjacent. I rented it. I didn't know what the fucking deal with it was. I think I thought it was fine when I was 12. I think it had enough stupid jokes for me to enjoy it. I'm sure it would not hold up anymore. But I do like I will never forget the ending of that movie, of how kind of like bleak it is. And that may have been like my first introduction, because what was that, like a 2009 movie, I want to say?
Yeah.
It got pushed back so many goddamn times too. Like it was
Yeah.
supposed to come out like it was like 5 years of seeing that trailer of for that film, and it got pushed back so many damn times. And you could almost see why. I thought it was very okay when it came out, honestly. But that ending scene where it's like, oh, but what if it sucks?
Right.
Like that may have been the first introduction I ever had to like, wait, do people not like this movie? Like I don't know how I went that long in my life without like knowing that, but I was like, oh, is that like a thing? Do people not like the Phantom Menace? And I miss being that naive. I miss being that sheltered from from like opinions in like the world.
It's just interesting, especially just given like perspective I have, like just seeing that curdling like really like run full time. That was my introduction to sort of internet discourse, was the Phantom Menace, and that kind of like blowback from it. I guess let's focus on like the two big sequences. We've kind of like mentioned them a couple times, but what everyone really loves talking about with this particular movie of the pod race and the Darth Maul fight / like the whole like ending bit of it. Let's especially the pod race. Like, what do you think makes that one sort of like the universally well-liked scene of this particular movie?
It's just fucking fun to watch. It's so well done. It's so well shot. It's like one of the best examples of that movie immersing you into its world, as far as like, you know, as far as having like an experience. You had an experience when you saw this shit in theaters, and you were a kid. And it's there's like the stakes involved too, even though like, you know, the build to it might be a little bit wonky, but
right, with the chance cube, everyone's favorite form of betting, a chance cube.
Chance cube. You can't just call it. Stupid.
It's either red or blue, Tori. It's very clear.
I just like how this whole thing is like, this race isn't worth both slaves, only one of the slaves. And then at the end, he's like, I lost everything. I was like, wait, I thought this wasn't okay. So like, what's the conversion rate on slavery on this fucking planet then? Like what is this? Like, this doesn't make any. All right, fuck it. I'm thinking too hard here. Sorry, fuck it. But yeah, no, as far as like seeing somebody like Anakin finally beat Sebulba, where yeah, it kind of like give you like breadcrumbs, like, oh, Sebulba always wins and Sebulba's an evil son of a bitch. But it's like it is very simple. It's A to B. You want the good guy to win the race. The bad guy is really, really hard to beat. Then the good guy, by hook or by crook, fucking does it. As far as like your simple good guy prevails type of storytelling, does a really good fucking job of it through this race. And then you also got the side stuff of all the characters. Like I forgot the pilot that like gets stuck and then just like fucking just blows up before they even like that type of shit. Like that sort of yeah. Oh, okay, that was it. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, that sort of slapstick kind of like hilarious tragedy of that character is just like you have memorable scene after memorable scene after memorable scene from this race. So I think that's like it's memorable. That's what sticks out. Honestly, no different than the Jedi fight at the end. Honestly, it looks cool. It accomplishes its goal of, well, being fun and looking cool.
I honestly still pinch myself over the fact that during the re-release a few years ago, I didn't go to the 4DX showing of it, because I think the pod race would have been worth the price of admission alone. Because in my experience with the 4D, just a little bit of a tangent, anything that's like with a vehicle or like an aircraft or something, like that's usually like the best 4D you can do. When I saw Top Gun in 4DX, it was like a genuine religious experience. I thought I was gonna like fucking fly with Tom Cruise. But yeah, no, I love the pod race here, and also going to what you said, Thomas, about like just of course how much of a miraculous feat Jar Jar is as a VFX creation. The fact that this is such a CGI heavy set piece, again, for the time that they did it, like the mechanics of the ships and how it reflects on the sun and like the intricacies of like creating like a whole digital landscape and keeping the continuity of the race in the sequence. Like it's, again, just like the very like nook and crannies of the sequence and how they technically accomplished it will never cease to amaze me anytime I watch the film. On top of the fact, like Tori's saying, it's just fucking fun, first of all. But when you like actually kind of like nitpick the details, there's nothing to nitpick. It's actually just a really beautifully edited design, the sound design, especially the little like one-liners and like little like laughs and shit they do like when they're fucking with each other. Like it's so like full too. Like it's such a movie within itself that I almost wish we could have like a whole pod racing movie. It's that good. But yeah, I mean it's just so miraculous for those reasons.
I think another big thing is, like, I mentioned this before, but this is the movie that has the most kind of blend of both CG stuff and, like, practical models and stuff. Like, at the Boon to Eve Classic, which is the race for the pod race, like, the stand is a practical model, and they have just, like, characters inserted in there digitally. But even a lot of the characters we see in the stands, there's a lot of guys in suits with, like, masks, but also CG creatures next to them. I just love, like, in Watto's little booth, you have Watto, like a totally CG creature. You have a weird alien guy that's next to him who's kind of like a weird, like, pointed head and stuff like that. And then you just have Warwick Davis just being Warwick Davis. He's not in a suit or anything. Just Warwick Davis is, like, next to Watto. It's a much more of a blend with, like, stuff like that, or even, like, Anakin in the cockpit. God bless Jake Lloyd for, like, that, and also in the Naboo fight, having to, like, really, try and, like, overact as much as he can to indicate that, like, this is such a struggle for him. God bless that poor little kid. I think that's a big thing for me with the pod race sequences. There's a lot of that kind of tactility that's still there in addition to having, like, the innovative CG stuff. And also, a big thing about, I always forget about until I rewatch the pod race, like, there's mostly no music in it until, like, the very end kind of, like, struggle with Sebulba and Anakin. It's a lot of just, like, we hear the sound of, like, the engines revving, or things exploding, or alien creatures, like, whine before they, like, get blown up and stuff like that. But you don't have, like, an oppressive John Williams score over it, which I think is, like, a real sort of rare form of restraint, especially for this movie, as we've been talking about.
Yeah, I mean, that I do think it is one of genuinely my favorite uses of sound design and sound mixing, like, in any movie ever, sincerely. I think it goes to, like, how many times I've seen it in my life, that, like, when I was watching it in theaters during the re-release, I did kind of feel like the Winter Soldier getting activated a little bit with, like, the little, like, one-liners that they were throwing out, because I forgot that I, like, knew them inherently. So, like, as they were saying it, like, my girlfriend, like, looked at me like quoting it under my breath, like, as they were like laughing at each other, and I'd be like, ha ha, or like something, or like I would like mouth the sound effect as it would happen, and she was just like shaking her head at me as I was doing that. I don't know, it's just so ingrained in the way they mix all those elements together. I don't know. It is one of the biggest feats, I think, of the entire trilogy. It really is. Like, not even just this film in particular, like, even compared to, like, Revenge of the Sith, which I think is a great film all around, this, like, stands toe to toe with that, I think.
And plus, it speaks to a lot of, like, George's in terms of, like, this is him in American Graffiti mode. It's cars going fast, baby.
Yeah, he just nails the coolness of it too, which is something Tori touched on, which is just kind of like how fun and exciting and cool it is. Like, sometimes that's something that George Lucas just knows inherently, I think, which is just like he knows when something is just good because it's cool. Like, I think inherently Darth Maul could just be could kind of be confined to that, of like he knows not to give too much because he knows what is enough. He knows it's fucking cool. He knows it's exciting, and he's just gonna let you like revel in like a big set piece for like 10 minutes or so. And he does. He just like he lets it all off, and it works perfectly.
Yeah, and even something like the big lightsaber fight, of course, at the end, which a lot of people kind of forget the fact that that is cut in between like 3 or 4 different other sequences, which in that Phantom Menace, like, making of documentary I mentioned earlier, they talk in detail about how, like, you see George struggling with that ending where it's like, it feels like we're kind of cutting to a lot of different things here that don't quite mesh together. But you know what? It's bold. We're gonna keep moving forth with it. It's so fascinating when you, like, watch that particular sequence and you were cutting, like, to the Gungans having, like, their big battle with the battle droids, and then also Anakin in that Naboo fighter saying, like, let's try spinning, that's a good trick, and stuff like that. That still doesn't take away at all from, like, that actual fight, and how, like, incredibly, like, acrobatic it is, and how, like, giant it is, and how, like, you can still get, like, the stakes of it, and just, probably my favorite bit of Darth Maul in Phantom Menace is when they have, like, near the end before he kills Qui-Gon, when, like, the red shields come up.
Yeah.
And Qui-Gon is, like, in a meditative state, and Darth Maul is, like, seething, circling like a fucking animal, like, waiting to fucking attack him. So good.
I mean, I love that. It's so. I mean, again, just great face acting for everyone involved. Like a true like a reluctant like pause and a very tense moment, and much needed because of the kind of sporadic fight choreography too, as well.
Hmm.
A nice breath of fresh air. But yeah, I mean, it's a great like buildup of tension, and then like when the shields go down and they just start attack each other again, it's it's really works. It's a great push and pull of like pacing and tension, and yeah, I've always loved this sequence. The argument that it is a little overdone in the choreography department, I will not disagree with. I think the sequels really nailed the balancing act of like they make it quicker than it is of obviously the original trilogy, but they also make it way more simple than the prequels do. I think those films do find a perfect balance of like what lightsaber fights should look like. But that being said, sometimes just seeing motherfuckers jump around with lightsabers is cool, no matter how frenetic and how silly it looks. Sometimes it is cool, like especially like in Attack of the Clones with Yoda, when he's like when him and Dooku are like fighting. It looks ridiculous, but there's also still the like 6-year-old self in me that is like, that's also fucking cool. That's Yoda. Like I like that he's just like a little PS2 character. I like that he's just jumping around like that. And I kind of just feel the same way about this still. Like it looks a little bit silly. I don't know if it entirely holds up. I think it's a little too choreographed at times, but like on the large, like what they accomplish with it, and also with the sound design in that as well. Like even just like the meshing of the like dueling lightsaber sounds and the use of color and everything. It's just it is still technically impressive, even if a bit silly.
Yeah, which I think summarizes the movie in general.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
Perhaps, yeah, yeah. But we've been talking for quite a while about the Phantom Menace. Is there any other stray thoughts anyone wants to get? Anything we haven't really talked about that much that we want to bring up about George Lucas's Star Wars Episode One: The Phantom Menace?
Hmm.
You still don't know who the Phantom Menace was. It still makes no fucking sense.
I think. I mean, who are we like if we had to like designate it right now, who would we say? Like I guess I guess I would go Palpatine. I guess it has to be, right?
I think it's Palpatine. Yeah, Palpatine's
Yeah,
behind it all, of course. Yes,
it's
I think
probably
that's
it's probably
him, yeah.
Palpatine. Or excuse me, Darth Sidious or Sidious.
Yeah. When I was a kid, with my last name being Serdorius, I always thought it was dangerously close to Sidious. My eighth grade history teacher would always, he would always do a thing where he would fist bump like every kid as they're entering the class, and he would be like Darth Sidorius like every time he saw me, and I'd be like, please stop, like, like all my
It didn't help that
crushes
you
were
wore
like,
a hoodie every day to school and you had like
no,
the hood over specifically.
no, I distinctly remember like one day, like in December, I was wearing a hoodie, and he was like, "Dude," he's like, "You're not helping your case," and I'm like, "Fuck, dude." um, I think it has to be Sidious because it just even, but they do give Darth Maul a run for his money. He does wear the clo or the hood at a certain point in the movie, so you know maybe
Yeah. I mean, a big shout out also, to the costume design of this movie. We haven't talked about it that much,
beautiful.
but I think all over, especially Amidala, obviously, is what gets a lot of attention for. But like you were talking about, like Panaka's like weird, like the Naboo like guard kind of garb. I really like. This is probably the biggest thing from the Plinkett review. I do agree with is like, why are the duster jacket things that like Obi-Wan had in A New Hope, like the Jedi uniforms?
Yeah, I
Especially when he's in exile, it's like, oh, you're wearing Jedi uniforms.
Yeah, that I mean, it is silly. I mean, there is so much like amazing costume design in this that I will never get over. If anything, I think this may be the most impressive of the three in that realm, maybe. Just because I think it covers so many different bases. Um, I could be wrong, but I can't think of either of the other like any sequence in two or three that are like even a half as impressive as like the elaborate Amidala stuff, or even just like I don't know, the palace guards and like the various Jedis and stuff that you see. Like they really go all the way with it here, and just on a production value standpoint alone, like it. I mean, I feel like it goes without saying, but it just looks so damn good, and that attention to detail. before I think he goes really full tilt into like digital and VFX in Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. Like it
Yeah.
is nice that the balance is at least more present here, which is something that I always admire about it. Because it is cool when he's like when they're walking around Tatooine at the beginning, like that's a real planet or like a real location that they're on. Like it feels like they're physically there.
Or even a
Whereas
lot
like
of practical sets as well for like the interiors of the ships, or even like Queen
yeah,
Amidala's office and stuff like that. They're actual practically built
yeah,
sets. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, 100%. Whereas like and I don't dislike this scene at all, but like for example, like when they're on Geonosis or something in Attack of the Clones, that's just a soundstage. You know what I mean? Like that's purely just them in Los Angeles or something. But there's a real, at least for the most part, like a practicality here to the sets where it feels like, oh, that is actually a person on a physical location that feels tangible to me. And I do like the marriage of that here, even aside from the final like Gungan battle, which the big joke of that was that it always looked like the Windows XP like loading screen. I do always think about that every time I watch this movie. But aside from that, I would say a lot of practical sets here that I like.
Yeah. Tori, any final thoughts? Any final like things we didn't bring up earlier about the Phantom Menace you want to shout out?
I don't think I'm gonna top the Windows XP home screen look of the Gungan scene.
All right.
I think that is the best that's the best word to end on, honestly. Yeah.
Right.
It's because it's facts. It's just
Yeah.
facts.
Yeah. I guess I would like to close off by at least saying that like it's so interesting like going into like a movie like this, like talking about like Phantom Menace that has had such a like weird fissure point in culture. It does really feel like that. Like you could almost argue there is a before Phantom Menace and after Phantom Menace in terms of a lot of things we're talking about, like the sort of innovations of technology and sort of response to fandom and all this other stuff. It's so odd that like so much of it is like hung on this movie that is like kind of awkward, kind of has like the just certain weird things that like don't quite connect it to the original trilogy in the best ways. At the same time, does have a lot of like spirit in terms of the gumption to be able to do what it's trying to do. It's such a weird like thing where no matter what feelings you have on this movie, I find it to be one of the most fascinating cultural objects of the last 30 years, honestly. I think there's like so much that can come from for good or ill with this movie that like George is even pulling from, like other sources and even like history. Like there was the whole weird thing when like Trump was starting to do that weird bullshit with trade federations like early last year and how it's just kind of like come full circle. It's like, oh, everything that everyone complained about, I think justly in terms of maybe the delivery system for it still has like kernels of truth in it in terms of like what corrupt governments would do necessarily. It's just it's so weird how like Phantom Menace has both aged poorly and aged incredibly well in weird ways.
Well, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I think that goes in just I think to the trilogy as a whole. I think denying that like when Trump was elected or reelected, whatever you want to spin it, like when all that was happening, like how many people used the this is how democracy dies gif like crazy.
Yes.
I think these films on the whole have aged, I struggle to say well, I will say better, but I do think it has kind of been a best case scenario for these films, right? Like I think they're as well received as they really could be, you know? I think they do have their own pocket of people that love them. I mean, you go to any Star Wars convention, any convention period, you'll see prequels specific cosplay. There's still prequels merch if you go to like an action figure store, like just a regular store and you go down the toy aisle, you'll probably see something with the prequel era in it to some capacity. Like go to Disney even. Like there is so much prequel stuff in Galaxy's Edge. I will say, like for me personally, like the middle ground that I live in, being in Florida, I'm an Orlando boy, born and raised, and I am a huge theme park geek. So the cross section for me as a big theme park fan and then also a Star Wars fan, I also really loved like when I was growing up, like the Disney weekends, like the Star Wars weekends, back before they fully took over. So now to like kind of like live in a world where Galaxy's Edge is a thing, and you go there and there's like, I mean, it is trying to be in continuity with the like sequel trilogy, but if you go into like the actual shops, yeah, you'll see a ton of stuff. There's fucking Watto plushies at Hollywood
Yep.
Studios. Okay, like it's embraced. It fully is, you know. So it, you know, for me, I think it's in a good spot culturally. You know, the people that revere it do, and I think at least like there's not any like hate for it anymore. You know what I mean? Like I think people have at least, even if they don't like it, they've made their peace with it. You
Right.
know, it's no longer keeping them up at night.
There's not as much of like the George Lucas ruined my childhood stuff necessarily, because those people have hopefully gotten over it. And if you haven't, grow the fuck up.
That's just ridiculous. I mean, and it's
Yeah.
the same thing can be said for like the sequels too. Like I like I'm sure we will be in the same position, God willing, that we're, you know, talking in like a few years. But like,
Right.
you know, like I'm sure that the kids that grew up in the sequel trilogy will like reclaim those movies the same way these
Right.
have been reclaimed. Like I you know, to quote, this is a great moment to end on. Like poetry, it rhymes. You know,
Yes.
it really does.
It truly does rhyme, as George said so famously. Along with Jar Jar is the key to all of this. Which, you know, in retrospect, very true. Very true. But, you know, on that note, let's go ahead and segue into our usual segment, Between the Lines. So for every episode, myself and guests recommend another film potentially that's related to the sort of letter criteria of what we're talking about, or tangentially is related to the film that we're talking about. But for the Star Wars season, I've opened things up a bit. For this season, I'm also allowing guests to recommend some other Star Wars media, so like a TV show, a special, some weird obscure pop culture ephemera, all in contention to be recommended for this segment, which I'll start off here in terms of sort of very Star Wars adjacent. My recommendation is a web series that's very unofficial to Star Wars, but also I think just might be my favorite Star Wars thing, of especially that I got turned on to during the 2020s, which is the George Lucas Talk Show. If you don't know out there, this is basically an improvised talk show that originally started at the UCB as live shows in like 2014 or so, in which Connor Ratliff, who's a comedian you might have seen like some various different TV projects, also created the podcast Dead Eyes, which was very acclaimed. He has, for like over a decade now, played George Lucas in these comedy improv shows that basically revolve around George Lucas being the host of a talk show, and his sidekick initially was Jar Jar Binks, as played by Sean Diston, who had to leave the show early on in its run, and ever since about like 2017 or so has been Watto, star of the Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, as played by Griffin Newman of the Blank Check podcast. And they basically play it out as like a talk show where it's, you know, George is the Johnny Carson, and you got Watto as the Ed McMahon, and then you have guests come out and are just brought into the weird world of what they've crafted, which often doesn't even include Star Wars a lot, just is mainly more about the weird pop culture ephemera that like George Lucas is obsessed with. Like with that show, there's so many recurring things about like, oh, George Lucas had apparently in real life owns like a master collection of Norman Rockwell paintings. So Connor Ratliff constantly has like George be a fucking Norman Rockwell fanboy who like has like different props or different like bits of merch and stuff. And it's such a very enthralling, fun thing. Like I got exposed to it, not through like the live shows, because those were all in New York and stuff like that. But when the pandemic hit, they started doing live streams, and particularly on May the 4th, 2020, they watched every single Star Wars movie. So that lasted like 36 hours, which was done mainly to benefit the UCB employees that had been fired after like obviously COVID shutdowns and stuff. And they did a lot of those like live streams, but also a lot of like regular, Zoom talk shows. But they've transitioned since the pandemic to doing live shows where they go to various different, comedy clubs and just have like actual like real famous people or even people involved with Lucasfilm be guests. And so there's a lot of there's hours upon hours of content on their YouTube channel, the George Lucas Talk Show. I would specifically recommend I believe it's episode 34, which features mainly Paul F. Tompkins as the guest, which is a really fun episode that is basically like them kind of transitioning into like Paul F. Tompkins is on Zoom, but they're all in a studio that they rented out. And it's just a lot of fun seeing like the weird permutations like of what Ratliff does and what Griffin Newman does and what also Patrick Kottner, who's the producer on it, does with a lot of that stuff. I think that's a great example. It's a great thing to have on in the background. It's like these live streams tend to run like particularly very long. The live shows that are like on stage tend to be about an hour and a half or so. But it's a thing that's brought me so much joy. I think it's so fun, especially also just the amount of different guests. Like they've had, I mentioned Paul F. Tompkins, but also like Ben Schwartz, Jason Mantzoukas, Amy Irving, one of the two Neville D. and Taylor directors. They had on the kid who voiced Andy on Toy Story. They've had drag queens. They've had just a random assortment of like very fun people on the show. I would recommend definitely that particular episode with Paul F. Tompkins is great, especially for there's a bit where Paul F. Tompkins calls a bunch of his famous friends who thanked him in the special thanks on his IMDb to say you're welcome to them. And it's a weird list of fucking people that he ends up calling that are very fun. But I recommend that, but also in addition, I really want to spotlight on the same YouTube channel. They've also been doing these, particularly Patrick Kottner has been spotlighting these amazing live readings of the various different Star Wars movies where he'll have like a all-star cast literally do like a script reading of the whole thing. And the first one they did was for Phantom Menace. And the cast of this is amazing, where you got Haley Joel Osment plays Anakin, Lorraine Newman plays Shmi and a couple other parts, Tony Hale is Qui-Gon Jinn. One of the best things, Eric Bauza, who's the guy who does the voice of like all the modern Looney Tunes, does Jar Jar, but in his Daffy Duck voice, which is like amazing. It's just Daffy Duck saying the role of Jar Jar Binks. It's pretty stellar. And they've done all the way up to, they did Force Awakens fairly recently, and they're going to be doing The Last Jedi, I think, in a couple months as well. But yeah, I just would firmly recommend that if, especially you like need something to have on during work and you're a weird kind of like pop culture obsessive like I can be. The George Lucas Talk Show is great. I know, Adam, you're a fan of Blank Check, but have you ever dug into the George Lucas Talk Show?
No, I actually haven't. I mean, it's something I'm very aware of. Like I just, following Griffin in particular, I see the post about it all the time, and I know I should dig into it, but it's been just one of those things I've never quite actually started. Although I will say, wasn't there a documentary film about it? I believe.
Yes. Yeah, it's called I'm George Lucas, a Connor Ratliff story, which is much more about like the pre-pandemic era, which I would also recommend for sure, because especially I got the Blu-ray for that, and that Blu-ray has like, they intentionally set the record for most audio commentaries ever on a disc. It's like 60 commentaries.
Wow.
Which is ridiculous.
Yeah, I remember that played at my local film festival, and that kind of reinstated like my oh, I should probably get into this, but yeah, no, I'll definitely like watch, because I'm actually in the need of a during work, exactly what you described, it during work, like something to watch. So I think that would be perfect for me.
Yeah, and Tori, I think I've shown you a bit of the George Lucas Talk Show. I don't think you fully dove into it, but we're all interested.
Yeah. No, because I remember when you were one of the times you were here, you showed me it. I thought it was funny. I actually forgot about it until you brought it up again. So yeah, no, I definitely would give it. I should probably give it more of a shot, at least to watch the one. I don't know if the one you showed me had Paul F. Tompkins in it, but yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing that one. So
it'll be in the show notes for sure here, the links and stuff to that. But Adam, what's your recommendation for Between the Lines?
So I tried to go a little bit outside the bounds of what was expected for recommendations here. And honestly, I was, trying to think of something through the newer era that stuck with me, because I was doing a lot of whining about how like in the Disney Plus world of Star Wars, it does feel like we're cheaping it a bit. I like the first two seasons of The Mandalorian, and Andor is obviously fantastic, but otherwise, I'm just with all the newer media, I'm just struggling to keep up and like enjoy it as much as I used to. That being said, though, one thing that was really interesting right after Disney started producing Star Wars movies, after they did their whole canon rehaul, they were like, okay, like these old books are called legends, and they do not, they have nothing to do with us. You know, like you can still enjoy them, they will exist, but they are not canon. So we are gonna release a whole bunch of new books that are canon to the franchise and build up to the Force Awakens too. That was a big marketing tactic. Was all these new books, they will in some way, shape, or form be promoting the Force Awakens or just being built up to it. They did the same thing for Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, but I particularly remember the build up to Force Awakens and the books that came out around those era to be really impressive. So there's a lot of books I could recommend from that era. Like I think the Captain Phasma book is like so much better than it has any right to be. I would also really recommend Star Wars Bloodline from Claudia Gray, which is about the aftermath of Leia basically becoming senator before The Force Awakens, but after Return of the Jedi. But it's about how it's leaked to the public that she's Darth Vader's daughter and how she has to like, deal with the public reception to that and spend it's kind of like a chamber piece of like a 72 hours with her after that information is leaked to the public, which is crazy. That's such an interesting idea for a book, and they do it tremendously. It's a really well written book. And also you get like a little bit of insight into like, I don't know, Ben as a kid and like her marriage to Han. It's very interesting. I liked that book a lot. But the big one that I would recommend, and if you don't read any other Star Wars book, I cannot recommend this one enough. It's called Lost Stars, also by Claudia Gray. It essentially is a romance book from in the world of Star Wars where two kids grow up under the regime of the Empire after the Adventure of Revenge of the Sith, and one of them grows up to join the rebels, and one grows up to join the Empire. So it's kind of like a Romeo and Juliet situation, but when it comes to like Empire versus rebels. And the way that you get to like understand these characters, like each chapter switches characters. So you get to see like, and you go through the history of the original trilogy through their eyes. And I mean, the romance that they have and the friendship that they have is very sincere in the way that's written. And it's just good writing, period. You almost don't even need to be Star Wars. It's just good as it is. But honestly, like the conversations they have in that book about like war and place and duty, and also like to see it from her perspective of like joining the Empire and how she just looks at it as like a 9 to 5 job, and how before she knows it, she's like being asked to commit these horrible crimes, but then she also feels like it's too late to get out of it at that point. And it's just really fascinating stuff, the way they write the history of it and how the original trilogy kind of happens around them. It's not really a cameo fest. There are characters that pop in here and there that are familiar, but largely you just kind of live with these characters as the events that you're familiar with happen around them, and you're just connected to their story. And it's just really an epic view of it, and I really loved it. And it's something that it's hard to imagine. I've read that 10 years ago, and I've really just kept it with me this entire time. So it's probably my favorite Star Wars book, I would say. So that's what I'd recommend. Lost Stars by Claudia Gray.
Yeah, I have not dipped that much into the Star Wars written material, honestly. Like, I remember when I was a kid, a lot of, like, older kids that I knew were very much like, oh, you need to read the Timothy Zahn books with fucking Admiral Thrawn and stuff like that. But I never really got into it. That does sound interesting, especially for, like, in the modern kind of Star Wars thing, the kind of like, oh, we're going to make this big universe seem smaller with the amount of characters we focus on. I like the idea of kind of focusing on like these kind of like outsider characters. It seems interesting to me. I'm very curious about that.
Yeah, I can't recommend that enough. There's other good Star Wars books as well that are in canon. I know Timothy Zahn read a few. I think he read the Tarkin book, Aftermath. I know he wrote.
Right.
And also one more I'll recommend in case you're like a Rogue One fan that's listening. Catalyst. It's about it's mostly about Mads Mikkelsen's character Galen and like his role in corruption of the Death Star and how he planted it and what the turning point for him was in that process. So That's a good one too. But yeah, there's a lot of good stuff. I kind of fell off right before Rise of Skywalker came out with
Mhm.
reading it, but I did read quite a bit of those books between Force Awakens and Last Jedi, and there's quite a few good ones.
Well, Tori, what's your recommendation for Between the Lines?
For me, it's it's basic, but it's the O3 Genndy Clone Wars series. It's probably my favorite thing about the prequels that was made around that time, especially right in between the Clone Wars and the Revenge of the Sith movies. It was just like that perfect filler in between. All the stories it would tell, especially when it would delve into like, oh, Anakin kind of slowly but surely going on his path to the dark side, all the side characters, all the other Jedi's that got their time to shine. I I'm still enthralled about it to this day. It's probably my favorite Star Wars related piece of media. Love animation, so and Gendy's one of the best. So this is definitely my pick as far as like Star Wars adjacent um, properties or media to watch. For me, the filthy casual of Star Wars fans. So
I do think if for Star Wars to kind of hit the mainstream, it has to do something like that. I think where it either has to be just really invigorating in its own right or just really stylish. And that's something that that series does really well, is that it just kind of stands on its own 2 feet really well. I loved it when I was a kid, as I mentioned earlier, and I think I did rewatch it. I think in during the pandemic, I want to say, and it holds up. It's so good. It's a great show. And you can also bump it up like in a whole day. I think I can't remember
Well,
exactly
right,
how many
because
episodes
the
it is.
the notable thing about it is that it was a micro series. That
Right.
like the episodes were very short. So on Disney Plus, it's literally 2 volumes that are about an hour each. So it's like literally about a movie length, basically, to watch
It's
the
so
whole
good.
thing. Right, which
God.
is yeah. And the thing is, I remember when I was a kid, and I remember seeing the premiere of it. I was like, "Oh, I'm so excited, Samurai Jack guy! It looks like that, and we're doing Star Wars. That's great." And the episode was literally about like I don't know 5 minutes, and I remember being so pissed off. Like, what the fuck? This is only 5 minutes long. That's what this is going to be, just like little teases. How dare you? So I didn't watch the rest of it when I was a kid. I didn't come back to it and watch like the full thing until I remember in the lead up to Rise of Skywalker. I just rewatched all the movies, and I was like, okay, I'm finally gonna watch the Genndy show. One of many reasons I would want to go back in time and smack my little self on the head. Like that, it's such a great fucking show, such a tremendous animation style. And it really helps to do like what we kind of talked about, like helping to improve certain things from the of the prequel trilogy. Like Grievous in Revenge of the Sith, I think, is like
Yes.
so much lesser than like in that show. He is a terrifying presence.
Oh yeah, when he like uses his like arms for the first time, like all of his arms, and he does the lightsaber trick, it's fucking amazing in this
Yes.
show.
Yeah, I think that show also introduces a lot of interesting things that they carry over, particularly into the Clone Wars CG show, with like the voice cast, like James Arnold Taylor as Obi-Wan, and also Ventress, that character, the evil bald woman Sith, who is like an amazing design. I think translated well on the CG show. That's my one big problem with the CG show, given I'm watching that concurrently with the season. The fact that they have like certain designs from the Genndy show, like Count Dooku or the Emperor in particular, where like they look so expressive in 2D, and trying to translate them to 3D, it just does not look that good. Quite frankly,
Yeah.
it's a weird thing. But yeah, I would definitely, if you have not seen that Clone Wars show, it's all on Disney Plus, and like I said, it will take you like about a movie length to watch. It is a tremendous thing worth watching.
And also go off that real quick about Asajj. Also, I can hear her voice in my head, like the voice acting for her. I don't know exactly who plays her, but just so fucking good. Like such an intimidating voice. It's great.
Yes. But yeah, on that note, let's repeat the titles of all the things you recommended here in case, somebody wants to, add them to their watch list or read list or their YouTube algorithm or whatever in my case. I recommended The George Lucas Talk Show, which you can find on YouTube out there.
Yes, mine would be Lost Stars by Claudia Gray, released in 2015. So you could probably find it at a local library, if not just on like Amazon or something.
and I recommended the Star Wars Christmas special.
It's the holiday special, you fucking fake fan.
The Star Wars Holiday Special Extravaganza. No,
I'll
but
co-sign
oh man, someone
You
who
respect
watched
Itchy and Nala
that.
and Lumpy.
as someone who watched that recently. Oh boy. But no, but the Gendy '03 Clone Wars show, which you can watch on Disney Plus. All you have to do is give the mouse money and he'll let you watch.
Yeah, I'll let you do that. But on that
Yeah.
note, it's time we start wrapping up here. We want to thank some people like Burial Grid for the music for our show. Purchases music at burialgrid.com. Thanks to Michelle Kyle for our artwork. Find her at MishKyle96 on social media platforms. And thanks to our supporters on Patreon, patreon.com/cinema2letter, where for just $1 a month, you get access to bonus episodes that we do over there, including audio reviews for newer releases. We're releasing this in May, and I'm not sure what's won the poll yet. You guys get to vote on which one audio review that we focus on. But I'm sure like some big summer blockbuster will be covered on the Patreon for this month. But also for this particular season, I'm going to have some Star Wars related bonus content, including for May, we've got a sort of version of a March Madness draft. We've done that several years in a row, and I decided to lay it to May to coincide with the season. We're doing what I'm calling a Glup Shido Star Wars draft, where just all the weird, obscure characters, we're going to have a big bracket of 32 of them, a couple of which will be voted on by the patrons already. Hopefully, we would have already had the poll out and stuff like that. And we'll count down, we'll have a matchup and see what ultimately wins of those kind of characters. But also in June, I'm going to do an audio commentary for one of the Star Wars movies we're not covering on the main feed. Y'all get to vote on that. And your choices will be, when the poll comes up on May 25th, either Return of the Jedi, Revenge of the Sith, or Solo: A Star Wars Story. Those are your options. Y'all get to vote on which one of those you get to hear me and a guest talk over. And also for July, as we're wrapping up the season, I'll be doing an Andor retrospective, a full-on retrospective of the 2 seasons of Andor, which Adam kind of mentioned earlier, one of the more acclaimed things of the Disney Plus era. Definitely the one we wanted to spotlight for sure on the Patreon. And I should also mention, Tori here is the co-host of Marco Polo and Adult Swim podcast, where every month we talk about randomly chosen different bits of Adult Swim media. And we should note, Tori, that we're kind of setting aside the randomizer during the Star Wars season for specifically the June episode, where we're going to be covering all 3 of both the Robot Chicken Star Wars specials and the Family Guy specials in one episode. Are you excited, Tori?
Oh boy, am I excited. I am I couldn't be any more excited. I get to watch Blue Harvest and then the second one and then 3 more and the third one and whatever the Robot Chicken ones were, because I don't ever remember watching those. So yeah, we're gonna have some fun come in June. Okay, it's not just gonna be Juneteenth. We're not just gonna be celebrating Juneteenth. We're gonna be celebrating some Star Wars in Juneteenth fashion. You're gonna love it. You're gonna be like, yo, I'm glad I give my $1 to Patreon to listen to this. I love Robot Chicken.
Yeah,
and everything. But seriously, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, I honestly, I would like to finally watch the complete Family Guy trilogy of Star Wars and see which Seth is the better Seth at Star Warsing.
Yeah. Well, even though both kind of cross over with especially those Robot Chicken specials, but
Yeah,
it'll be
pretty
interesting.
much.
I think that'll be our holiday special. We'll have Itchy and Lumpy be guests, and we'll have B. Arthur do a musical number, and Harvey Korman will do really bad bits. It'll be fun.
Yeah, I mean, like, what does a Wookiee want for Christmas when a Wookiee already has it all?
It has a comb, sir.
Yeah. Yeah.
Trivia, that's from a Star Wars album from 1980, which is notable for having the first vocal credit for John Bon Jovi.
Oh, wow. That's a great poll. That's fucking crazy.
Oh my god.
The cultural weeds of Star Wars are interesting, yes. But along with thanking all those different people, we got to thank our guests here, Tori, Adam. Thank you so much for being on. Really appreciate you being a part of the Star Wars journey. with me. Tori, we mentioned Marco Polo, but is there anything else you want to plug before we get out of here?
Listen, we can plug Marco Polo so many more times before this episode ends, but no, I honestly have nothing else to plug. Thank you for listening to us tonight, people, and also appreciate y'all listening to Marco Polo. I get to talk with literally my best friend about all this cool Adult Swim shit, and it's thanks to y'all. Thanks to you for supporting Cinema to the Letter, and by proxy supporting Marco Polo. Forever in your debt, forever appreciate it.
Yes, a life debt, much like Jar Jar Binks owes to Qui-Gon Jinn. Tori owes you.
Oh, you saw ruined the nice words.
Misa, so sorry. Misa, so
oh God.
But Adam, thank you for being on. Hopefully you don't regret it. And why don't
No, never.
But go ahead and plug yourself for what do you want people to find you on the internet?
Oh man. Well, no, I could never regret it. Like I say it every time, but there's only up from Mars Needs Moms, so I think I started low, and that way everything does seem like an upward. After that, so but yeah, I'll plug my podcast, Films for Breakfast. You can find it on anywhere you pod, Spotify, Apple Podcast, anywhere. We are currently doing our Steven Spielberg series, aptly titled Breakfast with Spielberg. We can thank my executive producer / girlfriend for coming up with that amazing title that I was too stupid to come up with myself, even though it's so simple. And yeah, I think I don't know exactly when this episode's posting, but it'll
be in May.
May. Okay, so at this point we should probably be spin the wheel probably at Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. By this point, we're all leading
right, because you're doing it in the lead up to Disclosure Day, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah. So the week of Disclosure Day, we'll have the Fablemans out. So, but yeah, I mean, go back and check it out. I've had a different guest on for every single episode. It's been crazy. It's been exhausting to go through his filmography, but also deeply rewarding, I think, to kind of watch it alongside him. I'm a big Spielberg boy, so it was nice to do that, and also like watch Jurassic Park and Schindler's List in the same day, the way he intended. So, yeah, I would definitely recommend going through that. And then, as always, I cover the new releases as well. And if you want to read my written reviews, you can go on filmsforbreakfast.com, where I have all that as well.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend. I've also been a guest a couple of times, and it's always fun talking to you about modern releases. I believe there was one episode where I did Nobody 2 and The Naked Gun.
Yes.
And then more recently I did No Other Choice, of the Park Chan-wook film.
Yes, equally all
very similar movies, all three of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Tom's is always a great guest, and whenever I get my shit together after the Spielberg series, I'll send out those Google Forms again, and we'll get Thomas on again soon.
Yeah, I would have definitely done that if you didn't only have what were the two choices? Like Saving Private Ryan and
it was the fucking Terminal, and you were like, right. I'm good, actually.
Right, it was like Saving Private Ryan or the Terminal, and it's like, well, one of these would be a very heavy discussion, and the other one would be talking about the Terminal. So I'm not sure
where there's no winning.
Right, there's no winning.
No, I completely get it. It was slim pickings by the end because I had so many people like just assaulting me for like
right
like every movie you can imagine. But yeah, no, like I said, when I get through this hump, because for Inside Baseball I have like 2 or 3 more recordings left of pre-recording before I'm fully done with the series. So after that I'll get my shit together, focus on the new releases, and we'll definitely schedule something with Thomas to have him on soon.
Yes. But for more of us, you can find us on whatever various hell site at cinema number 2 letter. That'll be the username that we use. And you can find me specifically on Blue Sky and Letterboxd as at Not the Who's Tommy. And for the show itself, if we recommend subscribing to us on Apple Podcasts or other podcasting platforms. If you're listening on Talk Film Society, which is our great podcast network, why not dig in all the other archives for like all the shows that are there? And you can also dig into our personal archives on Podbean for the last several seasons of Cinema to the Letter, and also Double Edge Double Bill, the old stuff there. You can hear Tori and Adam on various different episodes of both those shows. And nothing else, if you can't, support us with the Patreon, that's cool. Money can be tight for some people. But the totally free way to help us out is to rate, review, or simply share the show around to give us more visibility. Make sure that we are not lurking in the shadows like the true Phantom Menace out there. That's it. That's the twist. We're the Phantom Menace. We were the Phantom Menace the whole time.
have my hoodie down for listeners of the pod. So
Oh my god, it's Darth Sidoris. Adam just disappeared. I can't believe it. Darth Sidoris is here.
Get ready to menace your phantoms when we show up to Phantom you
Yes.
back to a state of menace.
Exactly how I would refer to it.
Exactly.
And we'll just say before we get out of here, next episode will be our End for New, which is sort of the main reason we're even doing this season, is the return to Star Wars in cinemas. The End for New for Star Wars, The Mandalorian and Grogu, which we're recording this in March, so we're far off from The Mandalorian and Grogu actually being in theaters. Tori, I know you have not seen any of The Mandalorian, right?
None.
So they're really aiming for a big crowd. Of like Tori's like there day one. Got to see this thing now. And Adam, how do you feeling about this? Are you all excited, or what's the trepidation going in here?
Oh, excited is such a strong word. I mean, I love the first two seasons of The Mandalorian. I think they are, especially the second season, I think really found a good stride. The third season, I think, is like just completely whiffs it. It squanders a lot of goodwill that the first two seasons brought up. I've seen the trailer approximately 1 billion times in the last year of my life at every time I go to an AMC theater.
Yep.
And it collectively does nothing for me. I'm not dreading it. I'm sure there's a good percentage chance that I'll probably at least give it a 3 out of 5. I think Jon Favreau is actually a pretty competent film director when he wants to be. So I think there's a good probability that's good. But everything I've seen from it it's really done nothing for me. I feel nothing when I watch that trailer. So I hope it's good. I'm always rooting for Star Wars to be good. But yeah, I'm more so curious like why they're doing it. So, but hey, I hope I'm proven wrong. I hope I'm singing a different tune by this time when the pod comes out.
Yeah, I'll get into my history with that show, but I'll just say I have not watched either the Book of Boba Fett, which is basically season 2.5, right, of The Mandalorian.
Oh, yeah, and spontaneously shows, so it doesn't feel like the show even knows that when you're watching it. It kind of feels like they just took over halfway through.
Right. Yeah, I have not seen that or season 3 of The Mandalorian, I think because I have a lot of issues with season 2. I think the last episode of season 2 is what broke me of Star Wars for a bit.
Totally understandable.
Yeah, which I'll get into on the next episode. That's for a different time. We've already talked for so long. So on that note, it's time we end this as The Phantom Menace ends by me holding up a giant weird orb and saying peace while a big parade of Gungans and such are outside, as every movie should end.
You gotta hold the orb high. You're not holding it enough.
I'm holding it as high as I can.
We'll do better.